Hey guys. Tonight, we fall headfirst into the lush, tangled jungles of southern Mexico and Central America, where the air tastes like crushed limes and wet bark, and every beetle looks like it could curse your bloodline. You're surrounded by the thick green breath of the tropics, where vines coil like snakes in toucan's eye, like you owe them something. Beneath your bare feet, the mud squelches with the quiet patience of 1,000 years. This is Maya land. Long before the Spanish, long before the pyramids, just stories, smoke, and corn. Lots of corn. You're about to witness how a few scattered forest villages somehow evolved into a sprawling, star-obsessed civilization with the best math in the Americas and some of the most enthusiastic bloodletting this side of the equator. Spoiler alert, you probably won't survive this. Not unless you can outsmart a crocodile deity and harvest maize in drought season. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're tuning in from somewhere special, drop your location and local time in the comments. I love seeing where you're all listening from. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. You begin as a barefoot child, crawling through the ancient jungle of the Payton Basin, ears twitching at the call of howler monkeys and the drone of mosquitoes, too large for polite society. There is no Tikal yet. No palaches. No stone glyphs. Just trees, rivers, and stories passed from cracked lips to listening fires. Your world is soaked in myth. The gods are not distant. They are your neighbors. Corn is not just a food. It's an origin story. The hero twins haven't yet wrestled death in the underworld, but their tail crackles in the night air like popping pine resin. You're not farming yet. Not really. You're gathering roots and fruit. Maybe coaxing squash from the earth in a cleared patch of forest. But already the jungle is speaking to you in patterns. The cicadas pulse in cycles. The moon flickers through the canopy in rhythms you're starting to trace. Every tree has a mood. Every cave has a guardian. When someone vanishes, you assume the forest took them not unkindly. Just as payment, and then it comes the maize god. No, not in a flash of divine light. In a seed, you watch your father burn a patch of land swidden farming, as modern scholars call it, and toss in corn kernels like dice at a gambling table. You pray. Rain falls. Weeks later, green shoots pierce the ash. It's not a miracle. It's the calendar beginning to tick. You don't have writing yet, but you speak with precision. The elders debate origin myths as if they're weather forecasts. Did the gods make people from mud first, then wood, then finally, after a lot of trial and error, from corn? That's the version that sticks. You, after all, eat corn daily. You dream in maize. It grows from your bones. Your soul is doughy and delicious. Apparently, the gods are odd and full of contradictions. There's Itzamna, who might be a sky god, or a priest, or the inventor of books. There's the water goddess Ixchel, who handles everything from childbirth to floods to rainbow venom. They don't walk around in white robes, they have jaguar pelts, scepters of lightning, and sometimes crocodile heads. One god is literally just a giant howling monkey with artistic flair. You learn not to ask too many questions. You play near sacred wells, cenotes where the air is cool and smells of minerals and old teeth. Adults say they're portals to Xibalba, the Maya underworld. You peek in, but never linger. If you drop a stone in, and it disappears without a splash, the gods are listening. If it splashes, they're annoyed. Either way, you run. Ceremony is constant. Not the kind with robes and choirs, more like smoky. Muttering. Incense-choked murmurings that roll from hut to hut like fog. Shamans blow copal smoke onto babies, into pots, even onto fish. They say it wakes up the spirits. You're not sure the spirits were ever asleep. You carve figurines in clay. Some are gods. Others are weird hybrids. A bat with a necklace. A man with a jaguar's jaw. A woman breastfeeding a snake. It's hard to say where the hallucinations end and theology begins. There's a toad whose poison makes you see the gods more clearly, or at least more colorfully. You're not allowed to lick it. Yet, as the years roll by, you watch huts cluster tighter together. Villages form, then swell. Fies born longer at night. Someone brings back obsidian blades from far away. Another shows off a carved jade pendant. And just like that, trade routes whisper into being. The outside world exists, and it's shiny. There's a new story among the elders, that some people to the west built colossal mounds from earth, shaped like animals you've never seen. Others claim there are lands with no jungle, just wide-open skies and deserts made of red dust. You lie awake wondering if the gods live differently in those places. Do their sacrifices hurt more or less? The ground beneath your home begins to change. You notice it in little things. Stones arranged in patterns. A fire pit lined with cut limestone. Eventually, someone builds a small platform just a step or two, but it feels monumental. You stand on it and look down at your neighbors, feeling oddly powerful. That's how pyramids start. One ego at a time. You start to believe that the gods want elevation, that smoke rises. So, prayers must too. So you stack stones. You build a platform higher, then another. The trees are cleared in wider circles. The sky feels closer. You mark the solstice with a shadow that aligns just right, and it gives you goosebumps. The gods are pleased, or at least they're not angry, which is practically a blessing. Historians still argue whether these early ceremonial centers were purely spiritual or already political. You don't care. You just know that when the conch shell is blown, everyone comes. And when the cacao is poured, you drink, even if it's spicy, especially if it's spicy. Your dreams are now crowded with gods, who have calendar gears for eyes and spiral glyphs on their chests. You learn to fear not just the dark, but the quiet, because silence in the jungle means something is watching, or worse, waiting. You sleep lightly, always listening. One night, as a thunderstorm shatters the canopy above, you lie under your woven mat and think we are no longer just people of the forest. We are people of time, of stories, of stone, and the forest, for once, seems to be listening back. Your hands are blistered and streaked with soot. The air stinks of ash and singed leaves as you fan the last embers of a fire. Watching the smoking stump of a ceiba tree dissolve into blackened ruin, you've just cleared a new patch of forest again, and your knees ache from planting another row of squash and maize. The soil here is stubborn, thin like a bad excuse, and it turns to hard crust under the sun. But this is the way it's done. Slash. Burn. Plant. Pray. Then, move when the ground gives up. You aren't alone. Other families squat along the smoky edges, each with their own tiny fields, each with a dog or two dozing beside their thatched homes. Chickens fuss near drying gourds. Everyone's waiting for rain like it's royalty. You can't just summon water, though someone in the next village claims their uncle once did by dangling a fish from a stick during a full moon. You try it. It does not work. The fish smells awful by morning. Still, the crops come in. Enough to eat. Enough to barter. You chew roasted cacao beans and gossip while stringing chili peppers to dry. If someone shows up with a wild turkey, it's a feast day. If someone shows up with a jaguar tooth, you don't ask where they got it. It starts with storage pits. Then, with better woven baskets. Then, someone starts digging drainage ditches. You dig your own too. And pretty soon, you realize your patch of forest is beginning to feel permanent, like it might stay long enough to bury grandparents and raise children. You build sturdier walls. You line your roof with palm thatch, thicker than your neighbor's. Because competition exists even in paradise. And then, it escalates. Someone proposes stone walls. Not piles. Actual fitted stones. You snort. Who's going to carry all that? But then someone does. And then someone else figures out how to stack them, with a mix of mud and crushed limestone that hardens in the sun. It works frighteningly well. And just like that, villages become villages with attitude. One of your friends, the guy who used to climb trees just to yell, "I see a god," now walks around in red body paint, giving advice on construction techniques and planting calendars. He calls himself a specialist. You call him that weirdo with blue feathers in his ears. But his building stands straight after the rainy season. And yours doesn't. So you shut up. Ceremonies grow longer. Someone invents drums the size of barrels. And the beat starts thumping louder than the howler monkeys. People start dancing more during planting rituals and wearing feathers in patterns no one's seen before. It's unclear whether the gods appreciate this or are just pretending to. Either way, the rains keep coming. You watch as fire transforms everything. It clears land. It hardens pottery. It warms beans. And now, it even shapes stone. Someone discovers that limestone can be fired into something smoother and more workable. You don't know what to call it, but it makes better floors and better altars. Altars begin popping up at crossroads and fields. At first, they're modest, just a few carved symbols, but then they start growing, festooned with offerings of squash, feathers, turtle shells, and even tiny carved maize ears. Every altar looks a bit different. Some people say that's just local flair. Others insist it's evidence of separate gods. Historians still argue whether these regional altars were early expressions of state religion or simple ancestral shrines. You're too busy stepping around beetles the size of your hand to care. Trade becomes a thing. Not just "I'll give you squash for obsidian," but organized, cyclical, predictable trade. You begin hearing about towns you've never visited: El Mirador, Nakbe, Cerros, places with wide plazas and strange accents. Their messengers wear bright clothes and carry seashells from the coast, painted gourds from the highlands. They also bring rumors that one village has started carving symbols into stone, that another has built a temple 5 times higher than the tallest Seba. You begin to suspect that your world is part of something bigger. There's a term whispered in some markets: Kahul, holy, divine. Sometimes it's used for a person, a leader. That's new. Someone suggests that the best way to get crops to grow is to have someone talk directly to the gods. You point out that this sounds risky. They agree and nominate someone else. That someone becomes your first Ajah, or Lord. He wears feathers that make him look like a walking tree and speaks with the slow certainty of someone who knows exactly how long his toenails are. He claims he was chosen by the gods during a dream involving a jaguar, a milpa field, and a particularly large yam. You believe him because he smells like copal and his eyes don't blink often enough. He also brings order. He calls for more land to be cleared, for shared granaries to be built, for roads to link nearby villages. Not full roads, but elevated paths, sakbiob, that feel unnaturally straight. You help pack the stones under his watchful gaze. Even though his math seems suspiciously round, the roads connect. The markets swell. The gods remain content. You take a wife, or maybe two, depending on how good your crop yields are. Marriage is mostly about alliance and tortillas. Children come, and you name them. After days, on the calendar 5 eagle, Trikan. They sleep in hammocks while you carve roof beams. You find yourself explaining maize planting cycles like your grandfather once did. Time is repeating, but more complex. More layers. More colors. Everything is spiraling. There's a new kind of fire now. Ceremonial fire. Controlled. Rhythmic. Hypnotic. You light it not for heat or cooking, but for timing. When the flame flutters a certain way, the priest murmurs something about an eclipse, and suddenly, everyone's fasting for 2 days and wearing black. You follow along because the last person who ignored eclipse rituals had a really bad rash for weeks. You grow proud of your town's calendar. It matches the stars frighteningly well. You can predict the solstices, equinoxes, even Venus rising. You start to feel smarter than your ancestors. You also begin to suspect that time itself is not a straight line, but a wheel. Every 52 years, the cycle renews. A reset. Some elders mutter that if the cycle breaks, the world might vanish. You laugh. Nervously. There's gossip that some towns now have permanent temples. Real ones. Massive stone platforms with stairs. Carvings. And something called stele tall. Flat stones, etched with stories and names. Your town doesn't have one yet. But you dream of it. Of carving your name into a stone so high, even the birds can't ignore it. You realize that your people are no longer just forest settlers. You're becoming builders, planners, timekeepers. The jungle hasn't disappeared, it's just retreating a little. Or maybe it's watching, waiting to swallow you up again if you forget who fed you. You sit at a fire one night, listening to a visiting trader describe a city with 10,000 people. Your eyes widen. 10,000. How do they eat? How do they talk without going hoarse? Do they still believe in the maize god? Or have they invented someone fancier? You fall asleep that night dreaming of plazas so large they swallow the stars, of temples that tick like clocks, of gods that rise not from caves but from the minds of men. Your world is changing, and you're finally ready to chase it. The sun cracks through the mist in golden rays as you squint up at the stone face above you, a weather-worn jaguar with flared nostrils and eyes that seem to watch you even in sleep. You're standing in the shadow of something massive, something new, something Maya. The pyramid at the center of your city is still incomplete. Its stairway half-cloaked in scaffolding made of bound vines and cedar poles. But even now, It rises like a mountain ripped from the underworld and turned upright. You've been hauling limestone blocks for weeks. Not the glamorous part. You're not carving glyphs or aligning corners to match the solstice. You're dragging rocks the size of small pigs using ropes that leave angry welts across your shoulders. Your knees ache. Your hands are raw. Your supervisor smells like a gourd of spoiled tamales. But when you pause and turn, you see the pyramid catching the sunlight just right. And your chest swells, despite yourself. You're building a stairway to the gods. And you didn't even go to art school. This city wasn't always here. It rose fast. First a market, then a temple. To then, layers of homes built from wattle and daub. Each one pressed closer to the next, like stubborn mushrooms. You've watched it grow from a village to a force. Streets now buzz with chatter. Footsteps, and the sharp clack of tools on stone. Children dart through alleyways. Dogs bark at shadows. And above it all looming, solemn and oddly patient, the stepped pyramid watches everyone. Historians still argue whether these early pyramids were modeled after mountains or whether they served as literal thrones for the divine. You don't bother debating. You just know that the higher you climb, the quieter the noise becomes. The air thins. The wind whispers louder. And the top, it doesn't feel like architecture. It feels like judgment. Each stone block placed is a prayer, not just to the gods above, but to the ancestors beneath. You're told that the pyramid must face true east, that the number of steps must match the sacred count 91 on each side, plus the top, for a total of 365. You blink. That sounds suspiciously like a year. Someone explains it is. That's the point. Time itself is baked into the blueprint. You pretend you knew that. More cities rise across the land. El Mirador flexes its muscles with temples and causeways. Tikal begins to hum with a rhythm that sounds suspiciously like ambition. You hear of vast reservoirs, of artificial terraces, of palaces whose walls reflect moonlight like water. The Maya are no longer just praying, they're planning. Your city elders send delegations to trade goods and gossip. Some don't come back. Others return with new ideas. Temples that have rounded corners. Masks of rain gods with eyes wide as plates. One trader claims to have seen a king who speaks through a conch shell and only walks on mats. You try this at home. It does not go well. Your aunt throws a squash at your head. And yet, influence spreads like vines. Art styles change. Pottery gets shinier. Glyphs begin to appear on every surface that'll hold still door lintels, stair risers, even the walls of latrines. You start seeing the same symbols in different cities. The calendar becomes gospel. The numbers grow sharper. The records more precise. You watch scribes at work. Their brushes made from fine hair. Their ink from crushed bugs and charcoal. They don't just write, they paint language. Their glyphs curl like smoke. Each one, a blend of sound, symbol, story. You catch glimpses of what they write, tales of kings, conquests, the gods' strange appetites. You ask what a particular glyph means. The scribe sighs and says it depends on context. So, like sarcasm, pyramids get taller. Cities compete. Tikal throws shade at Uaxacton. Calakmul sends ambassadors with the friendliness of a jaguar stalking a deer. You hear of ball courts being built in almost every city. Not for fun, though. People definitely cheer, but for ceremony. The ball game isn't just a sport. It's politics. Myth. maybe even law. You begin to suspect that everything is layered like tamales, sweet on the outside, serious underneath. You help expand a plaza, laying out smooth limestone that reflects the noon sun like a mirror. At the center, a new altar takes shape. Not just any altar. This one bears the likeness of a ruler. Your ruler, seated cross-legged, wearing a massive headdress shaped like a howler monkey's skull. Very subtle. You're told he's divine, that his blood feeds the gods, that when he fasts, the rains obey. When he sneezes, the crops listen. He occasionally climbs the pyramid, slits his tongue with a stingray spine, and drips his blood onto bark paper, which is then burned to summon visions. You watch from below, nauseous. You stubbed your toe last week and nearly cried. Still, the ritual holds power. The people grow quiet during the ceremony. The flames flicker strangely. You swear you see a vision in the smoke, something with too many eyes and a crown of maize. You tell yourself it was just hunger. The plaza is now the city's heart. People gather for festivals, eclipses, New Year ceremonies. Market stalls spill into every corner. Someone starts selling honeyed tamales shaped like pyramids. Someone else invents freed cactus chips. You hear rumors of fermented cacao drinks that grant visions. You try one. It just makes you feel like you're sweating from your eyelids. You're still building. Always building. New temples to newer gods. Palaces with better ventilation. Steam baths for elite lords who claim they need to sweat out the evil winds. One noble orders an entire mural of his victories painted along the west wall of his dining room. You're told it must include jaguars, spears, and at least one captive crying tastefully. You comply. Quirky gossip travels with the merchants. That a city on the coast only bathes in salt water. That one inland village has a sacred turkey who makes all legal decisions by walking onto painted tiles. You assume that's a joke. Then, you meet the delegation. They seem very serious. The turkey wears a collar. Still, your city grows. The temple now casts a shadow that reaches nearly to the outer wall by late afternoon. Children grow up thinking it's always been there. Elders claim it was twice as tall in their youth. You suspect both are exaggerating. But the city is real. It hums with intent. You look out over rooftops as dusk falls. Fires flicker in cooking hearths. Distant chants echo from the temple top. Somewhere, a ball game thumps and then erupts in a cheer or a groan. The jungle watches from the edges. Still close. But quieter now. For the first time in memory, you don't feel like it could swallow you whole. You feel like your people are building something that might last. You lie down under a thatched roof and dream of stairways that lead into the stars, of calendars that breathe, of cities that rise like thoughts from the mind of a dreaming god. You helped lay the foundation, and the future is climbing. You crouch near the edge of a stone court, sweat trickling down your spine. The scent of crushed rubber and incense thicken the air. Before you, two teams of players clad in leather and feathers dart back and forth beneath vertical stone hoops set high on the wall. They strike a heavy rubber ball using hips, elbows, and knees, never hands, never feet. The thud of ball against body echoes like a drum beat. You wince. Someone's going to rupture a spleen tonight. This is Poktapak, the Mesoamerican ball game. It's sport. Yes, but also religion, diplomacy, maybe even prophecy. The players are warriors and priests in equal measure. and the rules are known mostly by those who pretend they aren't made up on the fly. Spectators lean from every balcony of the court. Elders murmur. Nobles fan themselves with quetzal feathers. And the smell of roasted cacao and copal smoke swirls around like an ancient perfume. You cheer half-heartedly. One team's from your city, but your cousin is on the other. There's a moment when the ball arcs high and nearly lands in the stone ring. It misses by a whisper, and the crowd lets out a groan like the wind changing direction. No one scores. Yet, the game ends in a draw. Or so the officials say. Later you hear that the losing team will be honored with death. Or maybe the winners will. Or maybe only the captain. Historians still argue whether ball game sacrifices involved actual players or symbolic stand-ins. You just avoid eye contact with the referee. But it's not just sport. The ball court is a stage for divine theater. Every hit of the ball echoes the cosmic struggle between the forces of life and death. You've heard the myth of the hero twins Hunahpu and Expalanque, who played against the gods of the underworld and outwitted death through trickery and talent. Their victory helped create the sun and moon. You suspect their version of the game had fewer concussions. The mythology surrounds you daily. The gods aren't distant, they're needy, dramatic, and very involved. You wake with the sun god Kinacha burning over your home, and sleep under the watchful eye of Ixchel, goddess of the moon, midwives, and weaving. If a bird steals your tamale, it might be a messenger from the rain god Cake, who's always in a mood. You leave offerings at shrines, Kopal, maize, sometimes your last cacao bean. You've seen sacrifices too. Animals usually, but sometimes people. Always under high ceremony, with drumbeats and dancers and painted priests who seem to drift between worlds. Blood is seen as a gift, the ultimate connector between you and the divine, a way to feed the cosmos. You try not to think about it too hard when you cut your palm during harvest rituals. In the evenings, priests gather to read the stars. You lie on your roof, eavesdropping on chants and watching as they align bamboo rods and conch shell tubes to track the movement of Venus. Everything matters: the color of the sky, the direction of the wind, the sound of the night insects. You once saw a priest declare war was coming because a moth flew west on the day of 9. The next week, raiders arrived from across the valley. You start watching the moths more carefully. Your city is alive with ceremonies, naming rituals for newborns, coming-of-age scarification for teenagers, marriage alliances marked with feasts and painted faces, death rites that involve bundles of bones, painted skulls, and songs that vibrate deep in your ribs. Even the market opens with blessing chants. It's all connected. Time isn't a straight line. It's a loop, a spiral, a breath. Each festival follows the calendar with obsessive precision. You learn the Tzolk'in, the 260-day sacred cycle, and the Hab, the 365-day solar year. Together, they form the calendar round, which loops every 52 years. Elders whisper that if the gods aren't properly honored at the end of each cycle, the world could reset, or collapse, or explode, or maybe just rain frogs. You light a candle just in case. You help build a new observatory tower, just a platform really, but it aligns perfectly with the rising of Venus during the dry season. The priests say this will help predict drought. You say it will help predict which neighbors will panic next. You're right. The fish sellers double their prices. One evening, You climb the temple steps just to sit alone. The stone is warm beneath you. Smoke drifts up from a ceremony below. You think about the gods, about their many faces. Some kind, some cruel, some both. There's the god of travelers, who protects you if you carry a frog bone in your pouch. The goddess of weaving, who whispers designs into your dreams. The bat god who waits at cave mouths, offering visions or madness, depending on his mood. And still, the ceremonies continue. In the rainy season, there's the dance of frogs, masked dancers leaping through muddy streets to summon Chalk's favor. During eclipses, everyone hides indoors, fearing the celestial jaguar is devouring the sun. You bang pots to scare it away, just in case. Someone throws tortillas at the sky. You all pretend it helps. You begin to understand that religion here isn't a thing you do, it's a thing you live. Every corner of your life is steeped in ritual, story, and symbolism. You eat maize, and you remember that the gods made you from it. You fall in love, and you dream of moonlight and weaving goddesses. You bury the dead with jade beads in their mouths so they can pay their way through Zabalba. And yet, the gods never quite leave you alone. They demand sweat, songs, blood, and more sweat. You wonder sometimes what happens if you just stop. But then lightning hits a nearby tree, and your grandmother scowls at you without even turning around. Message received. The ball games continue. More often now. The courts are polished, smooth. Teams wear ceremonial gear, leather hip guards, bright capes, headdresses shaped like snakes or parrots. You still don't fully understand the scoring system. But that doesn't matter. The moment the ball slams into a player's hip and arcs toward the sky, the crowd holds its breath. Not for victory, for meaning. The gods are watching. And every bounce might be a message. One day, you're asked to help prepare the court for a major game. Nobles are visiting. You sweep the stone floor. Set offerings along the court's edge. Salt, feathers, and obsidian flakes, and then scatter red petals at each corner. The priest nods solemnly and murmurs a blessing. A lizard skitters across the floor and freezes near the hoop. Everyone stares. A good omen, a bad one. You glance at the sky. The clouds look bored. The game begins. The drums pound. The players move like dancers and warriors all at once. The ball moves with terrifying speed. You think of the hero twins again, of how they use trickery and skill to survive the underworld, of how every game now is a shadow of that first. Mythic match. You wonder if anyone truly wins. That night, you dream of the court flooded with stars. The ball is the sun. The players are constellations. You sit among them, not playing, just watching, waiting for the next serve. And somewhere in the distance, the gods murmur their approval. You crouch in the jungle shadows, breath shallow, watching as painted warriors gather around a smoky council fire. The leaders of your city have sent you as a runner, a witness, maybe even a spy, though no one says it out loud. You've arrived at the edge of something tense and enormous, two powers locked in an ancient, leafy standoff. Tikal and Calakmul, twin giants of the Maya world. You're not supposed to be here. But now that you are, you can't stop watching. The men around the fire wear headdresses so massive they tilt like sails in the breeze. Their cloaks shimmer with jade beads and quetzal feathers. Their faces are painted with the cold geometry of war-black bands. red swirls, teeth whitened with lime. One leader speaks in a voice so low, it barely rises above the cicadas, but every word sends ripples through the circle. You catch phrases like mutal and kanul, and though you barely understand the political weight behind those names, you feel it in your bones. These are not tribal chiefs. These are kings of kings, snake dynasties, sky dynastias, and they're tired of pretending to get along. Tikal, nestled deep in the Guatemalan jungle, boasts towering pyramids and aggressive ambition. Calakmul, to the north, moves like a serpent in the grass, quiet, coiled, calculating. They've fought before, traded insults and alliances like cards. But something is shifting now. The old balance is breaking. You feel it every time a torch flickers too suddenly, or a warrior tightens the strap on his spear. Back in your own city, you've heard the rumors that Calakmul once helped overthrow a Tikal king and installed a puppet ruler. That Tikal retaliated by forming alliances with smaller cities like Naranjo and Dos Pilas. That somewhere along the line, kings started calling themselves Kalumta overlords of war and treating diplomacy like an afterthought. The scribes write furiously on stelae, immortalizing every betrayal, every alliance. You watch as one stone slab is erected in your city plaza, freshly carved with glyphs depicting your ruler receiving tribute from a neighboring lord. There's even a scene of him trampling a bound captive who's been given the nose of a known Tikal noble. Subtle. You've started seeing more foreign visitors in your markets. Some speak softly, asking about obsidian supplies. Others seem to be measuring things distances between temples, lengths of roads. One politely compliments your maze. Another asks if you've considered strengthening your defensive walls. You suddenly notice how flimsy your guard towers are. Tensions rise with the summer heat. Your neighbors begin storing more food than usual. Armories are checked. War drums are tested. Children play games mimicking battles, using sticks and fruit peels as weapons. No one laughs. And then war comes not with a bang, but with the slow grinding of gears long set in motion. You're awoken before dawn by the sound of a conch shell, long and hollow. The elders call an emergency meeting. Scouts report Tikal forces moving through the southern trails. Too far from home to be visiting, Calakmul answers in kind, sending emissaries north to stir old allies. The jungle, for all its chaos, knows when to grow still. And now, it holds its breath. You're pulled into service not as a warrior, but as a runner. You carry messages from temple to lookout post, from commander to supply chief. You run at night, when the trees seem to lean closer and whisper in your ears. You learn every shortcut, every vine bridge, every hollow log that echoes underfoot. Sometimes your messages carry troop movements. Sometimes they just carry lies designed to throw off spies. You don't ask. One evening, you arrive at a forward camp near the border. Fires glow low, their light swallowed by the jungle. Warriors rest in silence, sharpening blades made of obsidian, so sharp they split hair like silk. A commander pulls you aside and points to a scroll wrapped in jaguar hide. Only for the Ajaw, he says. You nod, tucking it into the folds of your tunic, and run again before the dew even forms on the leaves. The battle, when it happens, is a blur. You're not at the front lines, but you hear the sounds from the ridge above the snap of spears, the wet thud of contact. The strange mix of shouting and chanting that turns war into ceremony. You don't look down. You just keep delivering your next message. When you pass a burned-out clearing, you pretend you don't see the twisted bodies. Later, the outcome is declared. Tikal has fallen. Or Kalakmul has. It depends who you ask. Cities trade captives. Tribute shifts. A new stela is erected with fresh glyphs of victory. Your Ajah hosts a feast, inviting nobles to dance and trade, jade masks. But beneath the painted smiles, everyone watches everyone else. Peace, for now, is performance art. Historians still argue whether Tikal or Kalakmul truly dominated during these centuries of conflict. The record is fragmented, scattered across broken stones and biased carvings. But you lived through it. And you know that power wasn't just held, it was staged. You could carve a victory as easily as you won one. Propaganda, it turns out, makes excellent sculpture. You find yourself becoming numb to the declarations. This lord ascends. That one is captured. Cities rise, burn, are rebuilt. You visit one city after years of absence and find its plaza renamed, its murals whitewashed with new kings and gods. You wonder how much of history is rewritten before the paint even dries. You meet a prisoner once, a noble from a rival city. Shackled, but calm. He's brought before your ruler, expected to beg. Instead, he recites poetry. You watch as your lord laughs, then orders him fed and imprisoned rather than executed. He might make a good advisor, he says, or a good example. You're not sure which would be worse. Amid the chaos, something odd happens. Cities begin copying each other more. The architecture starts to look similar. Same stepped pyramids, same roof combs. The glyphs borrow familiar shapes. You suspect everyone's stealing from everyone else. There's even gossip that Kalakmul has sent artisans to help decorate temples in distant cities. You wonder if imitation is a sign of admiration or fear. Through it all, the jungle endures. You walk familiar trails and see new trees growing over old battlefields. The vines don't care who won. The parrots remember no names. But you do. You remember the rhythm of rising power and the weight of history etched into stone. You walk through the ruins of a smaller city one day, long abandoned after an alliance gone wrong. Carvings still speak from broken walls. A noble's face stares out from a cracked stela, one eye missing. You touch the stone and whisper his name. Just once, to prove someone still remembers, and then you keep walking toward the next city, the next battle, the next game played between gods and kings, because in the Maya world, power is always rising, falling, whispering, never truly silent. Your fingers ache from hours of fine brushwork, and your back protests as you straighten from your crouch. Blinking ink from your eyes. The bark paper codex before you is nearly complete, a cascade of curling glyphs and elaborate pictures that seem to shimmer with life. You've just recorded the dreams of kings, the orders of gods, and the complaints of nobles who think their headdresses should be taller. You're a scribe now, trained in the most elite tradition of Maya literacy. And every stroke of your brush holds the weight of history, or at least the version your rulers want remembered. Writing here isn't a casual thing. Glyphs are sacred, deliberate, mysterious. You don't just learn to read them, you're initiated into them. Each symbol may be a sound, a word, a name, a joke, or a warning. Context is everything. You once spent 3 days arguing with another apprentice over whether a single glyph meant he was crowned or he got incredibly sunburnt. Your teacher said both were possible. The Maya script is logosyllabic. One symbol might mean a whole word. Another, just a syllable. Sometimes you combine them to make puns. Yes, divine puns. The gods love wordplay. Apparently, you once drew a bat holding a human heart and were told it was both a reference to a celestial eclipse and a political insult. You nodded, pretending you knew that already. Your codex isn't just for decoration. It records important dates, births, coronations, battles, eclipses, but it also includes prophecies, dreams, and offerings. The line between history and myth is thin. One moment, you're recording rainfall patterns. The next, you're transcribing a vision in which the maize god appeared in a canoe filled with frogs. Everyone nods like, this is normal. You smile politely and keep writing. The best scribes are more than artists. They're astronomers, boots, and sometimes spies. You're trained to memorize long strings of numbers, recite lineages, going back 15 generations, and translate a king's offhand comment into a flattering inscription about divine wisdom. There's a reason so many scribes wear masks. They need to keep a straight face. Your city has its own style. The glyphs here are rounded, lush, and expressive. In Palenque, they're tight and elegant. In Copan, they're sharp and formal. You visit once and get mocked for your curves. But the Copan scribe's hair is full of ink and regret, so you let it slide. You work closely with sculptors too. Stelae, lintels, even staircases, they all need words. You sketch out draft texts on banana leaves before chipping them into limestone. Mistakes are hard to undo. One poor novice once miswrote a king's name so that it accidentally translated to Lord Flatulence. That tablet now supports a chicken coop behind the temple. You visit it sometimes, just to giggle. One of your proudest works is a monument for the Queen's birthday. It shows her receiving gifts from tributary cities while sitting beneath a canopy of flowers. In the corner, you include a tiny glyph of a rabbit offering her cacao. It's both symbolic of fertility and a wink to her pet rabbit, named Ixtu, who once bit a noble in the foot. The queen is delighted. The noble pretends not to notice. Historians still argue whether scribes were independent intellectuals or tightly controlled servants of the elite. You can confirm yes, both. You're respected, envied, and occasionally threatened. Once, a general told you to describe him as like the storm serpent, fierce and beautiful. You asked if that meant with or without fangs. He narrowed his eyes. You included extra fangs. Your training includes sacred geometry. Every glyph and painting must align with cosmic principles. Spirals, grids, the golden ratio. You once spent an hour adjusting the position of a jaguar's tail so it would sit perfectly within a lunar arc. No one noticed, except the gods. Hopefully. You also record dreams. Rulers often describe visions after sweat lodge rituals, mushroom journeys, or especially dramatic meals. One king dreamt of dancing with the moon, who turned into a fish and swallowed him whole. You painted it as a victory over the celestial underworld. He was thrilled. You're still not sure what it meant. Your codices are folded accordion style, made from amit bark paper coated with lime plaster. They're lightweight but tough. You guard them fiercely. knowing they carry your city's soul. Only a few will ever read them. Fewer will understand. But still, you write. It's your duty, your art, your obsession. Sometimes you get requests from commoners, birth records, marriage blessings, prayers. You inscribe them on pots, walls, even clothing. A merchant once asked you to write, "Bring prosperity," on his sandal straps. 2 days later, he fell into a cenote. You now stick to pots. There's one room in the palace filled with records, wooden shelves holding bundles of codices, each tied with colored cords. Red for war, green for agriculture, black for rituals. Only the high priest and the chief scribe have full access. You sneak in once and see a codex bound in jaguar hide, its cover smeared with blood. You don't open it. You don't ask. You dream in glyphs now. Sometimes you see floating symbols hovering over people's heads as they talk. Like divine subtitles. You once kissed someone and saw the glyph for unexpected rain. You're still trying to figure out if that was romantic or ominous. One day, you're invited to travel with a diplomatic caravan to a distant city. Your job is to record the journey, the conversations, the alliances. You sketch landscapes, note weather patterns, and write awkward poetry about the chief diplomat's feet. He doesn't notice. He's too busy trying to impress a local princess with exaggerated stories of his spear collection. While away, you meet scribes from other cities. You trade ink recipes, gossip about royal scandals, and argue about glyph variations. You find one scribe who uses a turtle-shaped glyph to mean wisdom, while you were taught it means delayed punishment. You agree to disagree over some fermented cacao. You return home to find a new commission, waiting a temple frieze detailing the city's entire royal lineage, from the founding king to the current ruler, whose chin you must render with great majesty. You do your best. The chin is respectable. The final image shows the current king offering blood to the gods, surrounded by celestial signs. You place Venus just above his head, Saturn coiled at his feet. Around him, swirling glyphs whisper of storms, maze, love, and time. You step back, brush raised like a sword. It's done. You know that someday, perhaps long after you're gone, someone will read your glyphs and wonder what you meant. They might see prophecy where you saw politics, mystery where you just ran out of space. That's fine. That's the point. Your words, carved in stone and painted on bark, now belong to the future, to the stars, to the gods, and maybe, just maybe, to someone trying to fall asleep centuries from now, tracing the lines with their eyes, wondering who you were. You duck under a sun-dried awning, woven from palm fronds, and step into the chaos of the plaza. It's market day, and the air is thick with the smell of crushed cacao, grilled tamales, and the oddly metallic tang of obsidian blades, bright feathers, polished yade, and woven fabrics in dizzying colors swirl before your eyes. You blink, overwhelmed, clutching a clay pot of honey like it's a lifeline. This isn't just shopping. It's survival in the most competitive theater of the Maya world. You jostle past a trader shouting about macaw feathers imported from the far south, red and yellow, perfect for noble headdresses. Another hawker waves a pot of chili paste under your nose that makes your eyes water and your ancestors cry. You pretend you love it. That earns you a discount. Probably. You still pay too much. A woman in turquoise paint offers baskets of sea salt. From the coast, she promises, tapping the rim of her basket with a confident clack. You taste a grain. It's briny and sharp, definitely not from the nearest cenote. She winks. You wink back, even though you've no idea what's happening. Trade, in this world, is religion adjacent. Every good has a story. That cacao bean, it was harvested under the gaze of the moon goddess. Those obsidian blades, from highland mines, guarded by spirits who accept only snail shell offerings. That monkey skull charm, absolutely not cursed. The vendor insists. You back away slowly. Your city is a hub, one of many nodes in the sprawling web of Maya trade. You've heard of goods traveling from Chiapas to the Yucatan, from the Guatemalan highlands to the Caribbean coast. Traders use canoes carved from ceiba trees, paddling rivers that glitter with crocodile eyes, or walk weeks through jungle paths where jaguar tracks cross theirs at dusk. You once met a merchant who claimed he walked from Tikal to Copan with a single sack of jade beads and returned with a turtle the size of a table. You weren't sure which was more impressive. He cooked the turtle. By the way, said the gods prefer meat with a journey behind it. Historians still argue whether Maya markets were centralized under royal control or decentralized free-for-alls. You live it daily and can confirm yes. Sometimes a noble shows up and demands tribute tax on chili sales. Other times, people just shove past him and pretend not to hear. The system works. You pass a stall with flutes carved from deer bone. The vendor plays a quick tune that sounds suspiciously like the mating call of a toad. You're not sure if that's good luck. But 3 people buy one immediately. You keep walking, but the melody stays with you for days, echoing in your dreams. Near the center of the plaza, a group of weavers sell cotton tunics dyed with crushed insects, mosses, and bark. One proudly displays a tunic embroidered with the glyph for rain. Another features jaguar spots, a subtle nod to nobility. You buy one with a stylized frog. For speed, the weaver says. You wear it to your next errand. A dog chases you for 2 blocks. Maybe it works. In the afternoons, artisans gather in the shaded edges of the market to trade gossip and demonstrate their skills. You watch a man in a red headband carve a miniature pyramid into a piece of jade using only obsidian splinters and spike. Beside him, a potter spins clay into bowls, so perfect they look like they were grown, not shaped. You notice a curious detail: each artisan leaves a small offering near their stall. A chili pepper, a cacao bean, a tiny woven doll. Gifts to Ekchua, the merchant god, or perhaps to some local spirit known only to this city. You copy the gesture, leaving a fish scale you found in your pouch. The wind shifts slightly. You pretend that's a good sign. Not all trade is legal. In the shadows behind the plaza, traders offer more questionable wares: hallucinogenic toad skins, forbidden mushrooms, charms carved from human bone. You don't ask where the bones came from. You pretend you were looking for tortillas and back away, nodding politely. Among the buzz of buyers and bartering, a shout rings out. A young boy races through the plaza, clutching a bundle of blue cotton. A woman follows, wailing. The crowd parts. A guard grabs the boy, but the woman intercedes, shouting that it was her fabric, her child, her debt. No one can tell if she's lying. Eventually, a merchant steps forward and pays the debt in beans. The crowd murmurs and disperses. You learn not just how to trade, but how to witness. You begin to notice that certain traders always seem to know more. One, with a scar across his nose, knows which cities are at war and which nobles recently married. Another, who carries dried fish wrapped in agave fiber, also carries gossip about celestial omens and temple construction projects. These traders are the veins of Maya civilization. You begin to listen more than you speak. Sometimes, the market feels more like a festival than an economy. There are dancers, musicians, storytellers, reciting tales of the hero twins or the rain god, Jack's misadventures, with a particularly stubborn gourd. You laugh. You eat. You spend too much on a jaguar-shaped cup that leaks. You don't care. Trade brings more than objects. It brings ideas. A new style of headdress sweeps through the city after a merchant visits Chichen Itza. Suddenly, everyone's wearing feathers like sideways suns. A new game involving spinning tops and shouting zouk at just the right moment spreads like wildfire. You try it. You're terrible. Children mock you. You cry with laughter. One day, a caravan arrives with painted shells from the coast, stingray spines, and rumors of a foreign people who sail across the sea on giant wooden houses. You snort. That sounds absurd, but the shells are beautiful. You trade 2 bowls and a song for one. Back home, you store your treasures carefully. A shark tooth, a carved monkey pendant, a flute that makes bird sounds. Each one tells a story not just of where it came from, but who you were when you found it. The market changes you, broadens you, reminds you that while your gods are mighty, they are not alone, that your city is grand, but not the only light in the jungle. And still, tomorrow, the market will open again. The vendors will set out their wares. The wind will carry the scent of roasted chili, and you'll step into the chaos once more, your frog shirt flapping, your obsidian blade polished, and your heart just a little bit richer. You sit cross-legged on a woven mat in a sweat lodge, eyes closed, skin slick with heat and crushed herbs. Around you, steam hisses from volcanic rocks as a healer chants in low syllables that rise and fall like waves. You're here because your stomach's been a mess for days, or because your dreams are weird, or maybe because your aunt said you needed to balance your wins. You don't ask. You just sweat and hope your soul doesn't leave your body before lunch. Welcome to the world of Maya medicine. Part science, part spirit, and part mushrooms you probably shouldn't take before sunrise. Healing here isn't just about herbs or cuts. It's about energy, breath, dreams, ancestry, and which god you forgot to thank last solstice. Everyone knows the body has channels, like rivers. If one clogs up, your nose runs. If 3 clog up, your grandmother dies. It's a delicate system. The healer beside you carries a pouch filled with copal resin, Healy powder, dried scorpions, crushed leaves, bones, stones, and some kind of root that smells like angry honey. He sprinkles a bit on the fire and inhales the smoke. You follow suit. Your nose burns. You sneeze loudly. He nods approvingly. The spirits are listening. He says, you wonder if they're laughing. Outside, the sun rises over the huts, casting long shadows across painted walls where jaguars wrestle with serpents and maze gods, smile from behind stalks. You step out of the sweat lodge into a rush of cool air. Dizzy but calmer. A woman hands you a drink made of cacao, cornmeal, and chili. You gulp it. It's gritty and tastes like regret. But you're told it'll restore your essence. You shrug and drink another. Healing ceremonies here range from the practical to the theatrical. For a broken bone, a healer might use splints made from carved wood and linen soaked in tree resin. For fever, it's cold baths and bitter brews. For nightmares, it's more complicated chanting. Amulets. Sometimes, a feather fan waved in complex patterns over your chest. If you wake up less cursed, it worked. Herbal knowledge is passed down like gossip through mothers. Aunts. Old men with missing teeth. And anyone who survived being stung by something unidentifiable. You learn that chewing certain tree barks stops toothaches, that cactus sap can close wounds, that a mixture of crushed ants and salt cures snake bites. The ants disagree, but no one asks them. Your favorite cure is for sadness. You're told to sleep with a blue bead under your pillow, dream of the moon goddess, and sing a frog song at dawn. You try it once, and, honestly, it helps. The frog song's catchy. Healers, or hamen, aren't just doctors. They're part shaman, part therapist, part community oracle. They interpret dreams, prescribe ceremonies, and maintain secret lists of which herbs to never mix unless you want to see the face of death and giggle about it. You assume that's metaphorical. You hope so. Some specialize in childbirth. Midwives carry carved bones with glyphs of fertility and protection. They sing to babies still in the womb. During birth, they burn incense, chant, and ask the gods for a smooth exit. You attend one such birth. It's noisy, smoky, and deeply sacred. When the baby cries, everyone thanks Ixchel, goddess of midwifery, and the midwife spits 3 times over her shoulder. Tradition. Others work with mushrooms. Not just any mushrooms, sacred ones. Grown in secret places. Fed on shadows and moonlight. You try one during a festival. The sky ripples. The trees breathe. You hear a voice that might be your grandmother telling you to clean your mat. You wake up under a pile of banana leaves. You feel different. Gelmir. Your vision sharper. Your stomach deeply confused. Historians still argue whether Maya healers truly believed in the supernatural causes of illness or used them as metaphors. You're not sure there's a difference. Everything's connected. You once caught a cold after mocking a toad. Coincidence? Maybe. But the toad stared at you for a full minute afterward. You apologize. The cold fades. Disease isn't always explainable. You've seen people waste away while healers try every chant and poultice in the jungle. Some say it's the work of Wayab animal spirits tied to human souls. When someone dies suddenly, people whisper about an angry jaguar spirit or a jealous owl. You never mock owls anymore. They blink too slowly. Death itself is a process, not an end. The sick are prepared with songs and smoked herbs. When they pass, their bodies are wrapped, their mouths stuffed with jade or shell to pay for the journey to Xibalba, the underworld. The journey is long and full of trials. Rivers of blood, flying heads, sharp obsidian winds. You once dreamed of walking that path. You woke up, tangled in your hammock, screaming something about bats. Even healing buildings exist small temples where spirits are asked to intervene. You once visited one shaped like a turtle. Inside, carvings of frogs and water lilies line the walls. A healer touched your forehead with a wet flower and whispered your true name. You didn't know you had one. You left quietly and didn't tell anyone. The next day, your headache stopped. You learn about the wind. Not just weather wind, body wind. Energy that flows through you, carrying emotions, memories, heat. If you block your wind, your body rebels. You feel heavy. You argue with everyone. You drop hot coals on your foot. Then a healer taps your spine, cracks your neck, and says the wind is free again. You smile, but you also check your foot for blisters. Not all healing works. Sometimes, people die. Healers weep. Families fast. The body is buried beneath the house, or in a temple crypt if they were important. The dead are remembered with food, stories, and tiny clay masks. On special days, their names are spoken aloud, so they don't drift too far. You light incense for your uncle, who never finished a story. You beg him to send the ending in a dream. He doesn't. Typical. And yet, life goes on. Babies are born. Elders offer advice involving soup. The wind flows. You get better. Or you don't. But you always try. Healing here isn't just about fixing the body. It's about restoring balance. Between you and the gods. Between you and the earth. Between your spirit and your very loud cousin who won't stop playing his jaguar flute during nap time. So you drink your bitter tea. You smear your ash paste. You hum the frog song. And you hope, like everyone else, that the spirits are in a good mood today. You wipe a layer of ash from your brow as you step onto the cracked courtyard. The air thick with smoke and the sour tang of scorched wood. The once proud temple facade ahead is scorched black. Its stucco crumbling and glyphs blistered by flame. Vultures circle lazily above the plaza. Somewhere, a dog howls, then falls silent. Your city is dying, and you can feel it with every breath. You remember when this place thrived. The market used to hum with laughter, trade, music. Scribes would argue over the spelling of a deity's name, while children danced around offering altars. Now, the stalls are empty. Roofs sag. Rats dart openly across sacred paths. The drought hasn't broken in 2 years. And the reservoirs are shadows of themselves. Mossy bowls filled with nothing but cracked mud and frog skeletons. It began with the rain, or rather, the lack of it. At first, people blamed a late season, then the gods, then the ruler, whose bloodletting rituals began to feel more desperate than divine. You stood in the plaza as he dragged a stingray spine across his tongue, trying to coax the clouds back. It rained 2 drops. Everyone cheered, like it meant something. It didn't. The harvests shrank. Maize refused to grow. Squash withered on the vine. You tried to plant near the cenote, but even its cool waters had receded, revealing bones and old pots that no one wanted to acknowledge. People began to whisper of curses, of forgotten gods, returning for revenge, of an imbalance that could no longer be ignored. One day, you saw an entire family walking down the sack bay with bundles on their backs, leaving. You'd never seen someone leave like that before, not to trade, not to visit, but to vanish. Soon, more followed. At first, the nobility stayed, convinced things would turn. Then they started sending envoys to neighboring cities, begging for supplies. Some returned with food. Others didn't return at all. And then came the fire. Not a sacrificial one. Not ritual. This was wild. Hungry. Uninvited. It started in the fields. Swept through the outer houses. Then licked at the temple steps like a challenge. You joined a bucket line, tossing water from cracked gourds and shouting above the roar. It wasn't enough. It never is. In the aftermath, the temples still stood. Barely. Their gods now streaked with soot. The plaza was a skeleton of itself. The ruler called for more ceremonies, more blood. You watched as he cut deeper this time, his arms trembling, his eyes sunken. The people stared not in awe, but in silence. Historians still argue whether this collapse was a single catastrophic event or a slow unraveling, a knot pulled too tight for too long. But you live it day by day. You feel the fraying. Fewer people attend rituals. The nobles squabble over grain stores while pretending the roof beams aren't creaking. Priests murmur of omens they can't interpret. Scribes carve fewer stele. You try to write, but your ink is dry, literally and metaphorically. You venture outside the city one morning, walking along an old trail that used to be busy with merchants and messengers. It's overgrown now, choked by vines and silence. You pass an abandoned shrine, its offerings half-eaten by ants. A monkey watches you from a tree and then hisses. You hiss back. Because why not? You reach a neighboring village once a rival. Now, barely a shadow. The people there are thinner. The children cough. But they offer you water and a place to sleep. You talk with their healer, who tells you their ruler left in the night, taking the best warriors in half the maze. He said he had a dream. The healer shrugs. Must have been a good one. Back home, things are worse. The ball court is empty. The market, still. Dogs roam wild. A new priest rises, young and loud, proclaiming that the old ways failed because the old gods are tired. He carves new symbols into the altars, shapes that don't belong. All jagged edges and strange eyes. Some people follow him. Others disappear. You wonder who'll vanish next. You sneak into the temple at night and sit at the base of a once glorious mural. The maze god is still there, smiling faintly, but cracks split his chest. You whisper an apology. For what? You're not sure. For the lost harvests, for your fear, for not knowing how to fix anything. You begin to dream strange dreams, of temples sinking into roots, of glyphs that melt into puddles, of toads who speak riddles in a language only the dead remember. You wake with your heart pounding and your mouth dry. You reach for water. There is none. One morning, you hear commotion. A final ceremony is underway, one last attempt to appease whatever forces have turned against you. The new priest calls it a cleansing. You arrive late, just in time to see smoke rising and a cage of prisoners being marched up the steps. They aren't warriors. They're farmers. One is your cousin. You don't stay to watch. You leave that night. Barefoot, with nothing but a pouch of dried beans and your writing tools. You follow the path west, hoping the stories of Chichen Itza are more than just stories, that there's still a place where water flows and the gods answer politely. As you vanish into the trees, your city does not burn. It doesn't collapse in a single dramatic moment. It just goes quiet. The plaza gathers dust. The altar cracks. The vines creep in. gentle and patient. The jungle reclaims what was once borrowed. One day, centuries from now, someone might find your city. They'll see the broken walls, the worn glyphs, the collapsed roofs. They'll call it mysterious. They'll ask what caused its fall. They'll argue, but you'll know, it wasn't a mystery. It was hunger, pride, rain that never came, gods that asked for more than you could give. And so, you keep walking toward something new, or something ancient wearing a new face, toward hope, or at least toward water. The air is thick with salt and wind as your canoe glides into the flat, dazzling expanse of the northern Yucatan. You've made it barely, your hands blistered from paddling, your heart raw from leaving the crumbled city behind. But ahead of you, rising like a dream above the limestone plain, is Chichen Itza. It doesn't shimmer. It struts. The steps of El Castillo, the Great Pyramid, cut the sky into sharp triangles, and the whole place hums like a conch shell held to your ear. You disembark at a dusty dock carved along a shallow river and follow a path worn smooth by thousands of feet. Traders pass you with bundles of textiles and salt cakes strapped to their backs. Pilgrims move slowly, their faces painted, carrying offerings wrapped in woven reed mats. Everyone is going somewhere, but no one seems rushed. There's a rhythm here, different from the jungle cities, less disparate, more calculated. The people of Chichen Itza speak in soft tones, but they walk tall. You recognize Maya words, but also hear new ones, perhaps Toltec. Their gods sound familiar, but wear different masks. The feathered serpent, Kukulkan, is everywhere on temples, columns, pottery, even etched into the soles of sandals being sold by an enthusiastic vendor who claims they bring divine ankle support. You buy a pair, just in case. This city is grander than any you've seen. The ball court is the largest in Mesoamerica, long enough for echoes to lose their way. Carved panels show players mid-strike, one holding a severed head with flowers blooming from the neck. It's Putek, probably not regulation. El Castillo dominates the center, 91 steps on each side, plus the platform. Totals 365, just like the solar year. You're told that twice a year, during the equinox, the sun hits it just right, and a shadow shaped like a serpent slithers down the northern stairway. You arrive 2 days early, stake out a spot, and wait. When it happens, you gasp with the crowd. It's not just shadow, it's choreography. The gods know geometry. Historians still argue whether Chichen Itza was a direct successor to earlier cities or a foreign implant. You don't care. It works. Water flows from hidden cenotes. Food fills the markets. People smile with something that resembles ease. You learn quickly that this city thrives not just on ceremony, but on spectacle. Priests here are part astronomer, part politician, and full-time magicians of illusion. You see a ritual at the Temple of the Warriors. Dozens of men in jaguar skins and eagle feathers perform a dance that mimics a storm drum's crack like thunder, and dancers tumble like raindrops. At the climax, a boy, dressed as a maize sprout, rises from a pit in the ground. The crowd gasps. You drop your tamale. It's that good. One evening, you're invited to a feast, honoring visiting lords. You sit on a reed mat beside a noblewoman with a headdress shaped like a parrot mid-scream. You nod respectfully. She offers you roasted iguana. You chew politely. It tastes like ambition. The talk around the fire is of alliances, trade routes, and temple expansions. You quietly refill your cacao gourd and try to look wise. The next day, you explore the Temple of the Jaguars. Inside, the walls are covered with murals, bright reds, deep blues, faded only slightly by time. Scenes of conquest, ceremony, and gods descending from clouds. In one corner, a figure rides a canoe through stars, trailing flowers. You stare at it for a long time. It feels like something you dreamed once. You visit the sacred cenote. This one isn't for drinking, it's for offerings. The path is lined with torches, and the crowd grows silent as a priest approaches with a bundle wrapped in white cloth. A hush falls. The cloth is unwrapped. It's a carved idol, not a person. The crowd exhales. Still. The moment is heavy. The priest tosses the idol into the water, and it vanishes into the green depths. Somewhere down there are hundreds, maybe thousands of gifts to the gods. Some say, even gold. Some say bones. You decide not to dive in. You learn about Kukulkan, not just the pyramid or the shadow serpent, but the god himself, feathered serpent, creator, destroyer. He connects earth and sky, time and breath. Some say he was a king who became a god. Others say he was always divine. One merchant tells you he once saw Kukulkan in a storm cloud shaped like a coiled snake. You nod. You've seen weirder. Not all is peace. Whispers drift through the streets that the rulers here have new obsessions, that they've borrowed too much from foreign lands, that sacrifices have increased. You attend one, your curiosity outweighing your fear. It's solemn. Dancers in white glide across the platform. The victim is calm, drugged, perhaps. The priest's blade flashes, and the offering is made. The crowd murmurs prayers. You swallow hard and look away. You never return to that plaza. Still, the city breathes. It balances blood with beauty, fire with mathematics. You spend weeks studying in the shadow of the observatory. The Caracol, where priests map the heavens through slits in the stone. Venus, always Venus. It's tracked obsessively, used to predict war, marriage, and the best time to plant squash. You make friends here. A scribe who writes glyphs in perfect spirals. A cook who swears by bat meat in tamales. A boy who insists his dog is descended from a spirit jaguar. You believe him, mostly because the dog keeps staring at the moon like it owes him money. One night, a storm rolls in over the plaza. Thunder echoes between temples. You lie under a stone awning, wrapped in a woven cloak, watching as lightning splits the sky behind El Castillo. For a moment, the shadow of Kukulkan dances again, flickering in the storm. You wonder if it's coincidence. You wonder if anything, ever, is here. You begin to feel hope again. Not the loud kind, the quiet kind that settles behind your ribs and stays. You've left behind collapse, fire, and famine. And here, in the limestone heart of the Yucatan, you've found order, not perfect, not eternal, but working. For now, you leave a small offering at the base of the pyramid, a jade bead from your childhood, worn smooth from years in your pouch. You whisper thanks, not just to Kukulkan, to all of them, even the ones who let your old city fall, even the ones who demand too much. You understand now that the gods don't promise safety. They promise presence. And then you walk down the pyramid steps, each one steady beneath your feet, and melt into the crowd, another soul among many, searching for meaning beneath stone and sky. You squint against the afternoon sun as you run your fingers across the feathered coils of a serpent etched into the wall, a familiar face now. Kukulkan. But this version gleams with something different, more symmetry, sharper angles. And behind it all, Toltec influence. You've seen it creeping in like ivy, through old temples, the rectangular columns, the rattling war drums, the obsession with sacrifice, staged like state theater. This isn't the Maya world you once knew. It's something new, still Maya, but merged, reforged in the fires of foreign gods and new politics. You hear it in the way the nobles speak. Their accents carry northern rhythms, and they talk of distant Tula, the Toltec capital, as if it were a cousin or a conqueror. No one can decide if the Toltecs arrived as allies, invaders, or just cultural influencers with excellent taste in military propaganda. Historians still argue whether Chichen Itza was taken by Toltecs, or whether the Maya simply absorbed their symbols like fashionable gossip. Either way, you now live under their shadow and their serpent banner. The Temple of the Warriors grows more Toltec by the day. Columns sprout across its base, not carved with spirals or maze gods, but with stern, square-jawed warriors, clutching blades and atlatls. You walk between them and feel their eyes on your back. Nearby, a large stone figure lies on its back, chin raised, bull, resting on its stomach. The Chakmul. You're told it receives offerings, hearts, blood, sometimes cacao. You stare at its expression. It looks bored, like it's seen too much. You understand. Military parades become more common. Nobles now wear eagle and jaguar costumes, marching in unison, chanting songs with rhythms designed to impress and intimidate. You've heard that warriors now train year-round, not just for defense, but to represent the city abroad. War, it seems, has become a form of diplomacy, or performance art. Possibly both. Art shifts too. Murals show less of the gods cavorting with rainbows and more scenes of conquest cities burning, captives bound, lords surrendering jade necklaces to grinning victors. There's an aesthetic of control now. You miss the old stories, the ones where frogs outwitted kings. Religion, of course, adapts. Kukulkan rises as the star. He isn't just a god now, he's a brand. The feathered serpent is emblazoned on tunics, shields, coins, and even clay mugs. You buy one. It leaks. Still worth it. You hear priests describe him as the unifier, sky and earth, day and night, Maya and Toltec. You nod along. Though you wonder when he got promoted, you attend a festival in his honor, held during the solar zenith. The crowd gathers in the plaza as dancers perform a spiral-shaped routine while musicians pound drums shaped like skulls. The climax comes when a young noble leaps through a ring of fire, lands on his feet, and offers a dove to the Chakmul. The dove poops. Everyone claps anyway. Your friend, a scribe, tells you he's been ordered to update temple carvings to reflect this new fusion. He shows you a glyph that blends the Maya Kuhul Ajah Holy Lord with Toltec-style shoulder armor. Cultural synergy. He mutters, rolling his eyes. You offer him a half-roasted yam in solidarity. And yet, it's not all pomp and propaganda. The merging of ideas brings innovations too. You watch engineers reinforce water systems using new canal techniques. You see builders improve lime plaster mixes. The ball court acoustics are adjusted to carry chants more clearly across the field. Even the dancers have borrowed Toltec steps sharper, snappier, with more high kicks. You try one and pull something. Trade intensifies. Goods from central Mexico pour in turquoise, obsidian with a violet sheen, embroidered mantles depicting jaguar eagle hybrids. In return, Maya chocolate and carved jade head northward. One merchant boasts of receiving a macaw trained to say, "Long live the feathered serpent," in 2 dialects. You ask for a demonstration. The bird shrieks and bites him. Classic. Not everyone's thrilled. Older priests grumble that too many gods now wear feathers. Elders say the maze rituals feel rushed. One woman refuses to enter the new shrine because the roof angles are arrogant. You suspect that's not a real architectural critique. But no one argues. You begin to see signs of stress. Cracks beneath the polished floor tiles. A border town refuses tribute. A merchant caravan is robbed. And the guards say nothing. A minor noble accuses another of hoarding cacao. The tension is subtle but sharp. Like a jaguar tooth under your pillow, you attend a council meeting as a messenger. Standing quietly in the back, while lords argue about temple expansion plans. One proposes a new ziggurat dedicated to eternal union. Another suggests using the funds to improve irrigation. A third just wants bigger banners. No decision is made. Later, you hear they voted for the banners. One night, while gazing at the stars from atop a lesser temple, you speak with a traveling astronomer. She tells you that Venus will soon enter a period of invisibility. That's when cities fall. She whispers. Or kings change their names. You nod. Even though you're not entirely sure if she means metaphorically or literally. Still, the city carries on. The plaza is alive. You dance during festivals, drink spicy cacao, and argue with friends over whether the feathered serpent would win in a wrestling match against a thunder god. Consensus only if he cheats. You see the fusion in children, too. They speak in blended dialects. Wear jaguar fangs with Toltec wristbands, and casually debate whether to worship at the old rain shrine or the new warrior altar. You envy their ease. They aren't clinging to the past. They're skipping through it like a ball game. You realize something important. The Maya world isn't fading, it's transforming. Taking the pieces of collapse, of invasion, of reinvention, and building something strange, beautiful, and terrifyingly efficient. Chichen Itza is no longer just a city. It's an idea, a mirror, a warning, a hope. And so you walk the colonnade at sunset, fingers brushing worn stone, listening to the wind whistle through serpent heads and open mouths. You close your eyes and feel the weight of history not pressing down, but reshaping, whispering, waiting. When you open them, the stars are bright. The temple lights flicker. And somewhere, far below, drums begin to beat. Again, you roll over in your hammock, feet dangling lazily as the smell of beans and wood smoke floats in from the courtyard. Somewhere beyond the garden wall, a rooster crows like he's auditioning for priesthood. The sun is still hiding behind the palm trees, but your mother is already grinding maize on her metate. humming a tune passed down from someone who probably wrestled a jaguar in their youth. Welcome to a regular day in Maya lifeless prophecy. More breakfast. You stretch, bones cracking, and make your way toward the hearth, where clay pots bubble and a pile of tamales steams under a woven cloth. You pluck one and burn your fingertips. Worth it. Your sister is already awake, weaving cotton thread into a sash, using a backstrap loom that anchors around her waist and a wooden pole. The rhythm is hypnotic clack. Pull. Pass. Clack. Patterns bloom beneath her fingers like snakes coiling into flowers. The courtyard bustles. A boy herds ducks into a pen. A grandmother fans a fire with a turkey feather. Someone sweeping the entryway with a bundle of stiff reeds. Daily life is an orchestra of small, practiced rituals, each one tied to the cycles of sun, moon, and maize. You don't need a pyramid to feel the divine. It's in the tortillas. Your home, like most, is simple walls of wattle and daub, roof of thatch, floor of packed earth, polished with limestone paste. But it's spotless. Maya homes may be humble, but they're scrubbed cleaner than a priest's conscience on solstice night. Outside, a garden overflows with chiles, beans, isquash, and sweet-smelling herbs for medicine and flavor. A gourd of water hangs from a tree branch to keep cool. You take a sip and spit out a mosquito. As tradition demande, you spend your morning repairing a roof beam, sweating under the slow rise of the sun. Nearby, your uncle works a grindstone, sharpening a farming blade. His dog watches. Unimpressed, children chase each other with mud clumps. A pot cracks in the heat. No one panics. It's just life, looping like the calendar wheel, predictable. Warm, occasionally covered in ants. Later, you help in the milpa, clearing underbrush with a wooden hoe, checking the maize for pests, praying against drought. Slash and burn as the cycle clear. Plant, harvest, let it rest. The ash enriches the soil. For a little while at least, you wipe sweat from your brow and share a gourd of atoll with your cousin. It's lukewarm and gritty, still better than last week's batch, which may have contained part of a cricket. Lunch is squash stew, fresh tortillas, and a few bites of salted fish. A bowl of ground chocolate and water follows, thick and spiced with chili, frothed into foam with a carved whisk. You sip and feel your soul return to your body. This is not just food, it's ritual. Cacao was currency once. Now, it's emotional support in a cup. The afternoon brings trade. You walk with your older brother to the market square, carrying bundles of beans and a small clay whistle shaped like a turtle. The square bursts with color-dyed fabrics, baskets of fruit, strings of shell jewelry. A man offers to trade you a jaguar tooth for your shoes. You decline. He throws in a hat. You hesitate. Your brother elbows you away. Women gossip while exchanging tortillas. Men argue over stingray spines and salt prices. You watch a vendor sell tiny gods carved from bone rain gods. Maize gods. A suspiciously fat moon goddess holding a spoon. You buy one. She makes you laugh. Historians still argue whether daily Maya life was rigidly organized or surprisingly relaxed. You'd say both. There's a rhythm. Yes, a sacred logic to work. Rest. Eat. Pray. But there's also 1,000 tiny ways to break routine. You once skipped an entire afternoon to follow a squirrel that stole your gourd. You found a hidden cenote. The squirrel won. Back at home, preparations for the evening ritual begin. Your aunt arranges offerings, flowers, incense, a few slices of roasted yam on the household shrine. A carved image of a local deity sits on a low table. Not a big god. Not one of the calendar giants. But a domestic one. The god of this house. The one who watches your dreams and your dirty dishes. The evening meal is shared by firelight. You eat with fingers. Laugh with mouths full. Someone tells a story about a monkey who tricked a jaguar into marrying a turtle. You're not sure you follow the logic. But the turtle has excellent timing. You lean back, full and warm, and listen as the stars blink into place. The Milky Way stretches overhead, like the body of a cosmic serpent. Your grandmother says the stars are the bones of the gods. To laid across the sky, to remind us we're not alone. You believe her. She once made soup from a cactus and cured your cousin's hiccups. She knows things. Some nights bring special ceremonies, naming feasts. Midwife blessings. Fire rituals. Others are quiet. You burn a bit of copal and watch the smoke curl up into the rafters. You whisper a prayer, not for riches or glory, just for rain, steady crops, and a peaceful dream. You fall asleep to the sound of frogs singing in the distance. You dream of maize that grows in spirals, of hammocks that swing between stars, of tortillas that never burn. You wake once to find a moth on your nose. You take it as a sign of something vaguely encouraging, and then morning comes again. You rise with the sun and sweep the courtyard. The dog yawns. The fire is lit. The matate sings beneath your mother's hands, in a world of kings and wars and gods who demand blood. It's here in the ordinary, in the pots and looms and sweat and laughter, that you find the truest rhythm, the one that keeps you grounded while the cosmos spins wildly overhead. You sit cross-legged beneath a shady overhang, poking seashell counters across a stone slab etched with lines and dots. To anyone passing by, it looks like you're playing some kind of strange beach, tic-tac-toe. In reality, you're calculating the next solar eclipse casually, before breakfast. Because in the Maya world, you don't just watch the stars. You understand them. You map them. You carve their rhythms into stone. You know when the gods blink. Your teacher leans over your shoulder and grunts approvingly as you slide another counter into place. Very good, he says, squinting at the sun. But if you're off by one day, we'll all die. You smile nervously. He may be joking. Maybe. Mathematics isn't a dry affair here. It's sacred. Alive. You learn early on that the world dances to a numeric rhythm, 20s and 13s, loops and layers. The Maya use a vigesimal system, base 20. Likely because you have 20 fingers and toes. You learn to count by pointing to your limbs. It's efficient. And it means you've never stubbed your toe without thinking about math. The number 0 is old here. Ancient. It has a symbol, a shell, a soft pose, a breath. The concept itself is divine proof that even the gods sometimes have to start from nothing. You once asked what came before 0. Your teacher sent you out to fetch water until you stopped asking. Your life moves by the calendar. Actually, by calendars. There are two main ones. The Zolkin, 260 sacred days in a looping. mystical cycle of 20-day names and 13 numbers. And the Hab, a solar year of 365 days, 18 months of 20 days. Plus, a short unlucky month of 5 leftover days. Those 5 people stay inside, whispering. You once sneezed during that period. The village still talks about it, together. These calendars interlock like gears in a cosmic machine. Every 52 years, they align in what's called the calendar round. People fast, burn incense, panic slightly. 1 year. The cycle reset, and the sky clouded over immediately. Everyone cried. Then it rained. Everyone cried more, but happier. There's also the long count, a vast numerical system that tracks time from the beginning of the current world, which began on a date you've memorized, but no one ever asks about in casual conversation. 13. Ling. 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 According to the glyphs, it's equivalent to sometime in 3114 BCE by later calendars. Yes. You count from the beginning of this era, which means you can date anything. A birth, a var, a toothache. Time isn't abstract. It's carved in rock. You help record events with these dates. A king's accession is marked as something like 9. Shasi, Shasan, Ling, Tsi, Tsinashtimanik. Zero Muvan. That tells you everything, the long count date. The Zolkin day. The Hab day. It's the most beautiful bureaucratic chaos you've ever loved. Your favorite part. Astronomy. Maya stargazers track celestial bodies with frightening accuracy. Venus is particularly important. It's the war planet. You've helped chart its rise and fall, noting when it vanishes into the sun and re-emerges, sharp and bright, like a jaguar's eye in the dawn. Your city has delayed battles to wait for Venus, or launched attacks when it blinked into the sky. It's like a divine green light. Lunar eclipses are tracked with shell counters and bark paper charts. You've sat through nights in observatories, watching stars arc past stone windows designed to frame specific constellations. Once, you watched the Pleiades rise, and were so awed you dropped your cacao cup. It shattered. You swept it up in silence, pretending it was intentional. You hear whispers of cities competing to track celestial events. Kopan stele align with solstices. Palenque tracks lunar cycles. Uxmal's pyramid windows capture the equinox light just right. Some say the gods live in these alignments. Others say the priests just really love geometry. You think it's both. You once helped a priest prepare for a ceremony that marked the end of a Baktun, a Maya time period of about 400 years. He painted his face, wore a cape of butterfly wings, and stood silently while scribes recited history backward. You were told to throw corn at the end. You did. It bounced off his ear. You were not invited to participate again. Historians still argue whether the Maya tracked time for religious or political reasons, but you know the answer is always yes. Time is sacred, but it also justifies everything. A war started on a bad day. The priest must have read it wrong. A king born under a lucky glyph, obviously divine. A harvest fails during a cursed Trisina. Better sacrifice a chicken. Children are named after their birthday. You're called Saethix, which means 7 Jaguar. It's a solid name. You've met a guy named 13 Death. He smiles a lot. No one makes jokes. You begin to dream in numbers. You see spirals of days, glyphs walking in circles, stars turning like hears. You wake with new patterns in your head and rush to draw them in the dirt before they fade. Your aunt walks by, glances down, and says, "It looks like a good week for planting squash." You're asked to help align a new temple. The architect insists the stairs must face the exact sunrise of the summer solstice. You spend 3 dawns crouched on a rock with a plumb bob and obsidian mirror, watching the light rise just over a ceiba tree. On the 3rd day, it hits perfectly. You weep a little, then realize it might have just been dew in your eye. Numbers aren't cold here. They breathe. They warn. They celebrate. Every festival has a count. Every marriage has an auspicious date. You once saw a ceremony delayed by 2 weeks because the first date translated to 8 rain, 13 owl. No one wanted to risk that combo. You teach children now. They struggle at first, flipping counters and misdrawing the 0 shell. But one girl gets it fast. She draws a full calendar wheel in the dirt without being asked. You call her Bright Comet. She grins. She's probably going to eclipse you someday. And still, the stars turn. You lie on your roof at night, watching Venus burn white above the horizon. Somewhere, another priest is doing the same, maybe hundreds of miles away, logging the same movement, breathing the same awe. The sky is not chaos. It is memory. It is prophecy. It is story. And you're the one who makes sure no one forgets how to read it. You tiptoe barefoot across a mosaic floor, still damp from morning dew, slipping behind a carved screen as drums echo from the courtyard. Royal ceremonies are always this loud, equal parts sacred rite and political theater, but you've learned to listen not to the volume, but to the tone. And today, the tone is tense. That means something is brewing in the palace. Again, you're here as a servant, or maybe a spy. It depends on who's asking. Your job is simple: observe. Remember, don't get caught. So far, you're very good at the first 2. The queen arrives first, her robe trailing 3 arm lengths behind her, heavy with jade beads that clack like distant rainfall. Her headdress is taller than your uncle, crowned with feathers and the carved skull of a hummingbird. She smiles at no one. You suspect she already knows the outcome of today's surprise ritual. Then comes the king. He's younger than you expected, his face half covered in ceremonial paint and confidence. A bloodletting stingray spine is tucked behind one ear, just in case things get symbolic. He bows to the ancestors, waves to the crowd, and sits like he's bored of being divine. You kind of like him for that. Palace. Life in the Maya world is equal parts opulence and paranoia. One wrong glyph on a public stela and your career or your head is gone. So everyone smiles a little too wide, stands a little too still, and wears enough jewelry to sink a canoe. Behind the throne, court, scribes, lean over codices, recording every blink. One of them sneezes. Another adds a footnote. You're not sure whether it was a divine sneeze or just spicy cacao. Best not to ask. Royal families here don't just rule, they perform. Every gesture is a message. Every festival is a reminder that the gods chose this lineage to rule, not the dozen others with very persuasive genealogies. Marriage is politics. Children are strategy. And bloodlines, carefully curated myths wearing jade masks. You once saw a scribe cross-reference 20 generations to prove a new queen descended from both a maize goddess and a celestial parrot. The ceremony lasted 6 hours and involved 3 actual parrots. One flew away. No one noticed. The palace itself is sprawling. Rooms for sleeping, weaving, council, and, of course, drama. Courtyards lined with red stucco, gardens full of fragrant herbs and occasionally dangerous frogs. One hallway is painted entirely with battle scenes, another with star maps. There's even a room just for storing capes. You're not allowed in there. You hear stories of rival courts, one queen who sent her sister as a peace offering, only to have her secretly steal all the good scribes. Another who gifted a feathered cloak lined with cursed iguana bones. No one wears it anymore, but no one's thrown it away either. Historians still argue whether Maya queens held real power or were symbolic. You know better. You've seen the queen decide which cities receive jade and which receive silence. You've watched her dismiss generals with a single glance. Once, she smiled at a visiting priest, and his voice cracked so badly he fell into a fountain. The king, meanwhile, walks a fine line between sacred and human. He bleeds for the gods, leads ball games for the people, and attends feasts where nobles loudly discuss trade concerns that mostly involve who insulted whose headdress. You've noticed he only eats half his tamale when things are going well. Today, he doesn't touch it. Uh-oh. The heir is a teenager, newly tattooed with a solar glyph on his chest. He practices speeches at night when he thinks no one is listening. You are. He's terrible, but he's earnest. And that counts. His younger sister is sharper, quieter, and has already memorized the glyphs for betrayal in 3 dialects. You'd bet on her. In the inner chambers, council meetings take place with all the subtlety of jaguar wrestling. Nobles argue over tribute quotas while pretending to admire each other's capes. Priests demand better temple lighting. The maize surplus is shrinking. Someone blames a drought. Someone else blames the stars. And eventually, someone blames a dream. You once witnessed a plot unfold over a series of increasingly passive-aggressive cacao gifts. First, sweetened. Then, spiced. Then, laced with a vision-inducing mushroom. The recipient now talks only in bird calls. This is considered an improvement. Court musicians add background to the drama. Flutes, drums, and ocarinas shaped like howler monkeys. You once saw a noble argue with his wife, while a boy in the corner blew moodily on a turtle-shaped whistle. It was the most honest music you'd ever heard. Gossip travels faster than obsidian. You hear of a courtier who claimed to see a god in a reflection pool, another who swears his dog speaks in dreams, another who tried to flirt with the queen and now sweeps the ball court every morning in silence. Despite all this, the court runs, not smoothly, but consistently. Sacrifices are scheduled, alliances are brokered, celebrations are held with breathtaking regularity. One week it's a maize fertility rite. The next, a solar eclipse vigil where everyone eats flat cakes and tries not to look directly at the sky. You help prepare the tables. You hear everything. You start to understand how power flows not in straight lines, but in spirals. Like the calendar. A word here. A glance there. A ritual timed just so. The ruler may be the face, but the hands, the heart, the memory, that's the palace. That's you. And so, tonight, you slip into a gallery as the king walks alone beneath the star carvings, his jaguar cloak dragging behind him. You watch as he stops, presses a hand to the wall, and whispers something to the glyphs. You don't hear the words, But you see the way the torches flicker, how the murals seem to lean in to listen, how the night air shifts like a curtain. Even kings speak to stone when no one else listens. And sometimes, the stone listens back. You kneel at the edge of a field, soaked red by sunset, and not just by the light. The scent of blood and sweat clings to the air like humidity, and your knees ache from kneeling too long on polished stone. Before you, in a haze of incense and ash, stand 3 prisoners, bound, painted, trembling just slightly. Their faces are smeared with blue, their mouths clenched. The drums behind you thump like a heartbeat, growing faster. This is not a festival. This is war's echo played out not in secret, but in sacred theater. War, to the Maya, isn't only conquest or defense. It's a divine transaction, a recalibration of balance. Sometimes it's about trade disputes. Sometimes it's about insults. And sometimes it's just because Venus said so. You've seen how it starts. Tensions rise. Traders vanish. Glyphs begin to appear on stelae, describing a star war, a kind of divine military campaign tied to Venus cycles. Priests claim that the stars have spoken. Everyone nods. You sharpen your spear. Warriors prepare with ceremony. They fast. They chant. They burn copal and paint their bodies in the colors of their city, your city. Yours is red and black, the colors of fire and smoke. Your cousin, a young warrior, paints a jaguar face over his own, hissing at his reflection until even the birds fall silent. You march with the army down the Sakbiab white roads that cut through jungle like bone paths. Warriors wear padded armor, made from cotton soaked in salt water, tough enough to resist obsidian. Some carry spears. Others wield wooden swords, inlaid with obsidian blades that glint in the sun. Razor sharp, but they bruise as well as they bleed. Captives matter more than corpses. You reach the enemy city. At dawn, shouts rise. Conch shells blast. Arrows fly. The air smells like burning feathers and broken promises. You don't fight. You run supplies water. Obsidian tips. Messages passed from commander to commander. You hear the cries. The drums. The clash of flint and bone. And when it's over, when the enemy lord kneels, bloodied but breathing, you realize the real show hasn't even begun. The captives are taken, not all, but the most important: nobles, scribes, anyone whose blood is considered heavy with story. They're washed, clothed in ceremonial finery, and painted blue, not to mock them, but to transform them. Blue is the color of sacrifice, the color of passage, the color the gods prefer when you're offering a soul. Historians still argue whether all Maya wars were fought for sacrificial purposes, or if capture was just a convenient perk. You've watched generals debate whether to attack a city based on the beauty of its royal children. You think the answer is somewhere in between. Back home, the captives are paraded through the plaza. People throw flowers. Some chant. Some avert their eyes. You watch one prisoner stare down the king with a look so defiant, it makes your stomach twist. No one flinches. The ceremony begins. On the steps of the temple, priests assemble, dressed in skins and beads. One wears a headdress made entirely of hummingbird feathers. Another carries a fan of jaguar claws. They move slowly, deliberately. A dancer spins in a circle, imitating the motion of the stars. Drums pound in time, with the priest's heartbeat measured. Unrelenting, the first captive kneels. A priest steps forward. Flint, knife gleaming. The crowd goes silent. And then it happens. Swift. Clean. The chest opens. The heart lifted skyward. Still beating. Blood pours over the altar and down the temple steps like a red river. The gods are fed. The sun will rise. The world will spin. You don't cheer. No one does. This isn't celebration. It's maintenance. The wheel must turn. The gods must be acknowledged. You swallow hard and look away. Later, in the quiet of night, you find yourself walking the ball court. You sit on the cool stone bench and stare at the rings high above. You remember the stories of prisoners who chose the ball game instead, of captains who scored a final point and offered their lives with a smile, of sacrifice as honor, not punishment. You wonder if that's what you saw earlier, or if it was something grimmer, dressed in ritual's clothing. You remember once helping clean the temple steps after a ceremony. You scrubbed away the blood, listening to a priest talk casually about cloud formations. They always drift faster after a good offering, he said, tapping the stone with his staff. You weren't sure if he meant the weather or the gods. In the days that follow, gifts pour into the city, tribute from neighboring lords, rare feathers, clay vessels painted with scenes of victory, a giant turtle shell that echoes beautifully when struck. The captives, you realize, bought more than rain. They bought prestige, but not all wars are triumphant. You've heard of cities where everything goes wrong, where the omens are ignored, where the Venus cycle is misread, where a confident king attacks a city on a dark day and is captured instead. His blood stains someone else's altar. You visit a city once where this happened. The people avoid eye contact. Their murals are half scraped away. Their ruler replaced by someone smiling too much. You stay one night and dream of teeth. Not all captives are sacrificed. Some are ransomed, others enslaved. Some particularly skilled scribes or artisans are adopted into the victor's court, renamed, rebranded, but never quite forgiven. You've met one. He carved stelae with exquisite detail but never laughed, not even once. And yet, life goes on. The plaza is washed. The drums fall silent. The next day, a child is born, and the midwife whispers a blessing into its ear. May your blood be light. You hope it works. You begin to understand that war is just another way the Maya maintain balance. Like planting, like fasting, like watching Venus for signs. Blood is currency. Ritual is structure. Pain is purpose. One evening, you sit beside your cousin. Now, home from battle. He has a scar above his eye and a new necklace of jade beads. He doesn't speak of what he saw. He just eats quietly, staring at the fire. You hand him a gourd of cacao. He nods. That's enough. And in the quiet hours of early dawn, as the stars begin to fade and the jungle stirs, you whisper a prayer not for victory, but for peace, just for a while. You crawl on your belly, torch clutched in one hand, ducking beneath a curtain of hanging roots as the stone tunnel descends into something colder than the earth should ever feel. Your breath fogs in the stale air. The walls narrow. Above you, ancient glyphs pulse in the flickering light, warning of what lies ahead. You've entered a cave known to few, an entrance to Xibalba, the Maya underworld. Welcome to the afterlife. Don't trip. This is no metaphor. To the Maya, the underworld isn't some vague cloud realm. It's real, physical, mapped. It exists beneath the earth, often accessible through caves and cenotes. You're in one now. Torch crackling, spine tingling, heart thudding like a drum in a temple courtyard. You're not sure why you agreed to join this ritual journey. Curiosity, stupidity. Your cousin dared you. And now here you are, 10 feet underground with wet sandals and an unshakable feeling that something is watching. Xibalba is the land of the fearsome lords, 9 levels deep, riddled with traps, illusions, and gods with names like Skullstaff, Pussmaster, and Flying Scab. They sound like the worst rock band in Mesoamerica. But make no mistake, they rule here. The Popolva, the sacred storybook of the Quiche Maya, tells of the hero twins journeying through this realm, facing deadly ball games, rivers of blood, and rooms filled with sharp obsidian. You just face a bat. It hisses and flies off. Still terrifying. Your guide, a priest with a voice like wet leaves, explains in murmurs that this journey symbolizes death and rebirth. You must face the darkness, confront your inner rot, then emerge transformed. You nod like you understand. Really, you're just trying not to pass out. The walls sweat. Stalactites drip in steady rhythm. You pass altars left long ago, clay figurines, burned incense, offerings to appease the gods below. Some are centuries old. Some look fresh. You don't ask questions. You walk softer. Historians still argue whether Xibalba was a real geographic location or entirely mythological. You are now certain it is both. The deeper you go, the more your torch flickers, as if the very air resists light. You see a carving of a skeletal god with centipedes for eyebrows. You try not to stare. Then comes the test. A chamber opens wide, filled with ankle-deep water, so cold it bites. The priest nods for you to enter. You do. You wade in. The water tugs at your legs. Not like current, but like intention. You whisper the names of the hero twins under your breath. Hunapu. Ixbalonk. Help a cousin out. You reach the far side. Breathless. Soaked. Trembling. The priest smiles faintly. You've crossed the first level. You don't ask how many are left. You already know. 9. Each level tests something different. 1 is darkness. You must walk without flame. Hand against the wall. Heart pounding. Another is wind, where eerie drafts whistle your name in the voice of your mother. Your brother. Your enemies. Then one with jagged stones underfoot. And another, where the ceiling drips something sticky. You choose not to identify. At the 5th level, you meet the mirror pool. You're told to kneel and look. You do. Your face ripples. Shifts. You see yourself as a child, as an elder, as a skeleton wrapped in maize leaves, then as a bird, then as nothing. You blink and step back. The priest says nothing. You continue. You begin to understand why Maya rituals include so many offerings. The underworld is a bureaucracy of spirits. Everyone has an appetite. Blood. Flowers. Songs. Apologies. You hum a tune your grandmother used to sing. The next chamber is mercifully dry. At the 8th level, your torch dies. Just like that. You sit in the dark. You think of everyone you've ever wronged. You whisper their names. One of them whispers back. You decide it's best not to investigate. Finally, the last level. You emerge into a chamber where roots dangle from the ceiling like upside-down rivers. In the center, a shaft of light pierces from above, a natural cenote opening. Moonlight pouring through. You gasp. You climb, hand over hand. You rise out of the underworld. Your body shaking, covered in mud, sweat, and humility. You burst into the night air. Stars wheel overhead, and your breath catches in your throat. You're alive, changed, at least until breakfast. You lie on your back beside the cenote, watching bats swirl through moonbeams. The priest sits beside you, quiet. Not all must go below to understand, he says. But you did, and you returned. The next morning, the world looks different. You help sweep the plaza. You wash in cool water. Your sister hands you a bowl of atoll and doesn't ask where you were. But she looks at you longer than usual. Maybe she knows. You visit the family shrine and light a bit of copal. You leave a tiny clay offering a frog. For no reason you can explain, you whisper thanks, not just to the gods of above, but to the ones below, the ones who test you, trick you, strip you of pretense, and send you back into the sunlight with shaky legs and new eyes. Death, to the Maya, isn't the end. It's a passage, a cycle. Just as the sun dies each night to rise again, so must you journey through your own darkness to find meaning. Not just in temples, not just in stars, but in the wet stone silence beneath the roots. You carry Xibalba with you now, not like a shadow, but like a reminder that life is precious, fragile, and terribly funny, that even the gods get lost sometimes, that if you ever feel afraid again, you've already walked through worse and survived. You stand on the shore and shield your eyes as the boats appear alien shapes gliding across the blue horizon like oversized insects with wings of cloth. They move faster than any canoe you've ever seen, propelled by wind and something else, something unfamiliar. The elders whisper that strangers are coming. The priests read the sky. The obsidian says nothing, but you feel it in your chest. This isn't a trade mission. This is change. Arriving on a tide of steel and smallpox, the strangers step onto the beach with metal glittering at their hips and facial hair like tangled moss. They smell like dried meat and thunder. They shout in a language no one understands. Hold up crosses and flags, and gift beads that smell of salt. You offer them cacao. They offer pigs. The pigs immediately eat your sandals. You quickly realize their gods demand different rituals. No maize. No bloodletting. Just songs and guilt. They look uncomfortable in the sun, yet stare at your pyramids like they own them. One points at your sacred cenote and says a word that sounds like greed. You watch the first negotiation unfold in the plaza. Your king, flanked by priests and feathered nobles, stands tall beneath a parasol of quetzal feathers. The bearded strangers bring mirrors, metal axes, and something called a gun. It spits fire with a scream. Everyone steps back. A bird falls from the sky. The elders murmur. The wind shifts. At first, things seem manageable. The newcomers ask questions, take notes, sketch temples. They seem odd. A few even try the ball game. They're terrible. But then, One of them sneezes, and someone dies. And then 10 more. You've seen curses. But nothing like this. It spreads through homes like smoke. Invisible and unstoppable. People collapse mid-conversation, mid-meal, mid-prayer. The healer has no words. Even the gods go silent. You don't understand the disease. But you see its pattern. It doesn't care if you're a king or a cook. Entire lineages vanish within weeks. Funerals become routines. Graves shallow. The wails never stop. You dig one with your hands. Clay caking your nails. Wondering if the gods are testing you or abandoning you. Historians still argue whether disease or conquest caused the collapse of the Maya cities during Spanish contact. But to you, it's both. The sickness weakens the bones. The swords break them. You see, your temple repainted with foreign symbols. The sacred altar becomes a pulpit. A priest pours water on your cousin's head and says it will save his soul. Your cousin sneezes and dies 3 days later. You begin to distrust holy water. The Spanish build churches atop pyramid bases. They force nobles to kneel, to confess. They burn the codices, the bark paper books, the libraries of the gods torched. You hear the crackling from the plaza. You try to imagine the glyphs screaming. Your scribe friend cries for days, muttering calendar dates under his breath until he forgets which day is today. One friar seems kinned. He learns your language, teaches you his ozen, tells you stories of his god nailed to wood. Rising again. You nod politely, but you're thinking about the hero twins, about the journey through Xibalba. Different stories. Maybe. But you know resurrection when you hear it. He gives you a small, wooden cross. You hang it next to your maize god pendant. If anyone asks, you pretend they're cousins. The resistance begins quietly. Hidden shrines. Secret chants. You visit a friend's home where the grandmother still burns copal to Ixchel behind a curtain. She winks and says it's just for the smell. You both laugh. Some fight back. You hear of uprisings in the hills. A masked warrior who calls himself the Bat Lord leads raids on Spanish caravans, then vanishes into the forest. No one admits to knowing him. Everyone hopes he's real. One day, your city's last temple is stripped of its carvings. A Spanish governor declares it a warehouse. Children throw rocks at the serpent head stairs. You retrieve one carving from the rubble, a sun glyph chipped and cracked. You hide it in your pouch, next to a frog charm and a poem no one can read anymore. The world reshapes itself. New laws, new gods, new diseases. Your tongue twists around foreign prayers. Your calendar is replaced, but the stars don't forget. Venus still rises. The moon still hides during eclipses. The rains still come late. But faithful, you visit a cenote at night and offer a whisper. No flowers, no blood, just your voice. It echoes, low and soft, and returns with silence. You take that as a yes. The Spanish build cities where jungles once held empires. They rename the rivers. They crush temples into gravel for roads. But they never quite understand the jungle. The vines grow back. The roots push through cobblestones. You once saw a tree split a chapel wall, like it was peeling fruit. Nature remembers. Some of the newcomers learn your stories. A friar copies glyphs before they're banned. A soldier listens to your poem and writes it down phonetically. Your name is misspelled, but it survives. You teach your children both languages, both calendars. You show them how to spot the constellation that signals planting season, and how to ask politely in Spanish for more beans. They learn. Quickly. Too quickly. Your daughter sings the frog song at dusk. Your son carves a sun spiral into the side of a church bench. You pretend not to notice. The wind rustles the trees just slightly louder that day, and so, you live on. Between worlds. Between gods. Between names. You wake each day, knowing your ancestors watch from stones pulled down and rebuilt into new shapes, but they still watch. You feel it when you pass the old temple foundations. When you dream of pyramids, their stairs unbroken. You're not gone. You've just changed. You crouch beneath a mango tree outside a crumbling church. The shade barely cool against your skin. On your lap rests a worn cloth bag filled with herbs. Jade beads. A folded cotton sash. And a battered wooden flute that no longer plays in tune. You've carried these things for years not because they're valuable, but because they're remnants of a story you're not supposed to tell anymore. You are Maya, still, even if the world insists on forgetting. Your grandmother taught you quiche. She whispered it between the cracks of Spanish sermons, tucked it between bread loaves and bedtime songs. You remember her smile as she taught you the glyphs, traced them in the dust, and then smoothed them away before anyone saw. The eyes of the gods are not blind, she'd say, but sometimes they must pretend to be. You speak Spanish when required at the market, in the town square, to the visiting bishop, but at home, you still murmur the names of your ancestors under your breath as you light the cooking fire. You don't write them down. You carry them in your ribs. The old cities are gone. Chichen Itza, Palenque, Copan swallowed by jungle and time. The temples are ruins now. Their stones pillaged. Their stories shattered. But you've seen the vines that crack mortar. The roots that split pavement. The jungle doesn't mourn. It waits. You know people who still make offerings. Quietly. A carved gourd left in a cave. A whisper into a cenote. A basket of maize tucked under a tree that just looks sacred. There's no priest. No ceremony. Just memory pretending to be instinct. And it works. Sometimes, in the hills. You hear drumming. Not Spanish. Not modern. Something older. A rhythm that makes your feet twitch and your ears ache. You follow it once and find a circle of children, clapping and laughing, as a boy dances in a jaguar mask. One girl chants a song about a sun god who can't find his shoes. You sit and cry before you realize why. Historians still argue whether the Maya truly survived the conquest, or whether only fragments remain. You smile at that. Fragments are enough. Fragments grow. One glyph etched into a potsherd is enough to rewrite history. You meet a woman who embroiders the old glyphs into cloth sun signs. Calendar wheels. Serpent heads. Just decoration, she says, but winks as she folds the fabric. Her hands move like her grandmother's. Her thread remembers. You help bury a relative in the traditional way, feet facing east. Maize in both palms. A frog amulet tied to the ankle. The priest scowls, but says nothing. The church bells ring anyway. You say 2 prayers, one in Spanish, one in silence. Your town celebrates festivals with a strange mix now. Saints ride feathered floats. Drums echo behind brass horns. At the Day of the Dead, children wear jaguar paint and eat pan de muerto beside incense made from crushed pine and copal. You stand at the edge of the crowd, watching a boy dance between crosses and candles. And you swear. You hear the hero twins laughing from the shadows. You once tried to explain to a Spanish teacher why your grandmother insisted on planting maize on a lucky day. He called it superstition. You corrected him. It's math. You said, it's time. He laughed. Your maize grew taller than his roof. You keep a stela fragment by your bed. Just a chip of carved stone, barely larger than your palm. The glyph on it is weathered. But you recognize the curve, a calendar mark. It doesn't match the modern date. You suspect it's marking something bigger. A prophecy. Maybe. Or just the right day to forgive someone. One day, you visit the ruins of your ancestral city. Tourists swarm the plaza. Selfie sticks flashing beneath the shadow of a 1,000-year-old pyramid. A guide mispronounces the god names. You bite your tongue. Then a little girl, her nose pressed to a stone carving, turns to her father and whispers. It looks like a story. He nods. That's enough. You dream in glyphs again. Spirals. Stars. Serpents. You see the ancestors not angry. Not mournful. Just patient. They stand on broken temples. Watching. Waiting. Whispering. Not for war. Not for glory. Just to be remembered. You speak to your children in quiche, sometimes. They roll their eyes. Answer in Spanish. But they hear you. You see it in the way they pause, before stepping on old roots. In how they light a candle with both hands. In the way your son hums the frog song when he's nervous. You carve when you can. Small pieces wood. Stone. Sometimes just lines in the dirt. You don't always finish. That's not the point. It's the movement. The memory in motion. In the dry season. Do you walk to the cenote and leave a bit of cacao on the ledge? You sit, humming a tune older than language, and watch the water shimmer with sky. No one joins you. That's fine. You're not alone. And when you rise to leave, the wind picks up slightly. The leaves rustle. The vines shift. The water ripples just once. Maybe it's coincidence. Maybe not. But you smile. Because the Maya are not gone. They breathe. Through you. You sit in a quiet schoolroom carved from cinder blocks in history. The walls painted with faded murals, one of Kukulkan. Another of a child holding a book titled Mi Cultura. The air is warm. The fan above you squeaks in a rhythm so consistent, it's practically a metronome. Around you, children shuffle in their chairs, switching between Spanish and Maya languages without even noticing. Outside, the modern world roars past on motorcycles. But inside these walls, the past and present walk hand in hand. Your niece is one of the students. She's learning both calendars, Gregorian and Hob. She can calculate a birthday in 3 systems and beat you at number games without breaking a sweat. Her handwriting mixes Roman letters and Maya glyphs in a way that would make both priests and ancient scribes raise their eyebrows. She's proud of her name, which is in Quiche. It means the one who speaks to maize. The Maya world lives on not in temples, but in kitchens, markets, festivals, classrooms. It's in the way people still plant by the moon, still whisper to the rain, still leave a tortilla for the ancestors on special nights. It's in every joke told in Mom, every lullaby sung in Yucatec, every grandmother who slaps a tortilla flat with the same rhythm her great-great-grandmother once used. You visit the town square, now dotted with cell towers and taco carts. In the corner, A woman sells embroidered shirts with calendar glyphs stitched across the collar. Next to her, a man plays marimbas beneath a Coca-Cola umbrella. You watch as tourists snap pictures of a boy in jaguar paint and ask him if he's Aztec. He sighs, mutters Maya, and holds out his hand for a tip. Some have forgotten, or confused you with others, or assumed you disappeared like the dinosaurs. But you're still here. The Maya didn't vanish. They adapted. They transformed. You walk city streets, wearing jeans and sandals, carrying a smartphone in one hand and a corn offering in the other. Both are tools. Both are maps. You sit with elders who remember the old stories, not the ones in books, but the ones told in hammocks, beside fires, with cocoa and laughter. One woman recounts how her father used to call fireflies the lost stars of Xibalba. Another man remembers a ball game played during a solar eclipse. When everyone panicked and played in silence, you record their voices, not with bark paper and shell counters, but with a microphone and app. Still sacred. Historians still argue about how to define Maya civilization. Is it the cities, the kings, the calendar, the collapse? But you know better. Civilization isn't stone. It's not even blood. It's memory. It's language. It's how you say hello, how you plant, how you grieve. In modern Guatemala, southern Mexico, Belize, and beyond, millions still speak the old tongues. Quiche, Yucatec, Quechua, Tzotzil, and over 20 others. Children learn Spanish for school and Maya at home. Sometimes they blur. Sometimes they don't. Both fit in the mouth like twin coins. You attend a wedding where the bride wears white lace over a huipil embroidered with stars. The groom's father blesses the couple in both Spanish and Celtal, sprinkling holy water and crushed flowers across their feet. The couple lights a candle for each ancestor they can name. When they run out of names, the room goes quiet, not sad, reverent, like someone just entered. You take a bus through the highlands, passing towns with names in Nahuatl, Spanish, and Maya, all mashed together like a long song with too many verses. A vendor hops on, selling mango slices with chili powder. He hums the frog song under his breath. You hum along. You visit a museum in Merida. A tour guide points to a stela and explains the long count to a group of tourists. They nod, confused but fascinated. Then a small girl tugs your sleeve and asks what the glyph for rain looks like. You draw it in the dust. She smiles. You've just passed something down. The glyphs return not just in textbooks, but in murals, tattoos, poetry. Maya artists paint murals of maize gods holding smartphones. A poet writes odes in Sutujil about his grandfather's hammock. One teenager in a nearby town runs a YouTube channel explaining the Tzolk'in calendar with puppets. It's funny and accurate. You help organize a festival, not just for tourists, but for the people. For you, dancers wear jaguar skins again. Not replicas. Not costumes. Real ones. Inherited. Patched. Sacred. A boy recites the Popol Vuh with a nervous stammer that makes the crowd cheer louder. A woman sings a lullaby in Yucatec that makes grown men weep. The cenotes remain. The temples sleep. But they're not gone. They hold stories in their stones. You visit one during a solstice. The sun hits a narrow slit in the pyramid wall. And for a moment, a golden beam lights up a glyph of a serpent's eye. Tourists gasp. You smile. The gods are still punctual. You sit with your niece, as she writes an essay about the hero twins. She draws them with skateboards. You don't correct her. They would have loved it. You ask her what Jibalba means. She says, "The place where you have to face yourself." You nod. She gets it. You whisper the old names sometimes. Not aloud. Just in your breath. Hun Hunapu. Ixchel. Chak. Ixbalonk. You don't ask them for favors. Just recognition. You're here. You remember. And the world keeps spinning. Venus still rises. The frog still sings. The maize still grows. You're still Maya. Always. You wake before dawn and sit by the edge of the village, where the jungle presses in like a curious guest. The stars are still visible, their light pulsing faintly in the canopy gaps above you. There's a stillness, thick and warm, broken only by a distant howler monkey who sounds like he's auditioning for a horror film. In your hands is a long, folded strip of bark paper, newly inked with glyphs. It marks the date. Not today's date. A much older one. The end of a cycle. Or maybe the beginning. The long count calendar. Everyone keeps asking about 2012. Didn't the Maya think the world would end? Tourists laugh nervously, half hoping you'll say yes. You never do. Because they don't get it. The Maya calendar isn't about endings. It's about circles. Cycles. Movement. It's not a ticking bomb. It's a heartbeat. You trace your finger along the glyphs. Each symbol is more than just a number. They're days named for jaguars. Rain. Corn. Serpents. Sacrifice. Time. To your ancestors. Was a living thing counted, named, revered, and fed. You never feared the calendar. You danced with it. You built pyramids around it. You structured your life with it. The sun, the moon, Venus. They weren't faraway lights. They were relatives with appointments. You remember the stories your grandmother told. How each Baktun, a unit of almost 400 years, was a chapter, and when a cycle ended, you didn't scream. You swept your porch, lit a fire, made a tole, and listened for what the world wanted next. Change isn't death. It's translation. Historians still argue what exactly the end of the 13th Baktun meant. Was it prophetic, political, poetic? But you know how it felt. A pause. A breath. The moment between notes in a song. A soft space for reflection. In 2012, you joined your community at the ruins. Not for panic. For ceremony. Elders lit copal. Children danced in white. A jaguar mask was passed from hand to hand like a blessing. You sang. Slowly. The names of the gods and the days. Your voice wobbled. But no one minded. Even the sun cooperated, rising at the perfect moment to strike the top of the old temple's corner. There were cameras, and laughter, and that one guy in a tinfoil hat. But beyond all that, there was something ancient humming beneath your feet. You felt it in your spine. A memory awakening. The Maya didn't predict destruction. You chuckle every time someone says they did. What you predicted, what your ancestors calculated to the decimal, was renewal. The moment a world finishes exhaling. And before it breathes again, the long count keeps ticking. Today is a Katun Tu Aja, or close enough. You celebrate it with a banana leaf tamale. a shared smile, and a whispered prayer to Ixchel to keep the rains balanced this season. You're not sure if the god's still here, but you whisper anyway. You visit a friend who's restoring a stela. He's half archaeologist, half sculptor, chiseling new glyphs into old stone, not replicas. He says, continuations. His daughter helps him sand the edges. She hums the frog song without knowing it's older than steel. There's a radio program in your region that broadcasts in 3 Maya languages. You hear a grandma call in and dedicate a poem to her grandson. She ends the call with koaks, meaning, let's go. It's her way of saying, keep moving forward. You carry that with you as you walk the forest paths, where vines twist over buried staircases and toucans gossip overhead. You stop beside a moss-covered carving. It's just a fragment, half a glyph, weathered, shy, but you recognize it. It's the sign for to bloom. You smile. Of course it is. The Maya are not a ruin, not a riddle, not a prophecy gone viral. You're a breath that never stopped, a syllable still echoing through time. Your people mapped the stars, debated kingship, joked about frogs, danced with fireflies, feared Zibalba, embraced maize, and endured metal and plague and erasure, and yet, here you are. You finish your day under a thatched roof, watching Venus rise again, bright and sharp like a watchful eye. The coals in your hearth crackle. The dogs snore. A child nearby hums herself to sleep with the same lullaby you once heard under a different moon. You lean back, arms behind your head, thinking of all the cycles turning your breath. The stars, the days, the people. You're part of something older than pyramids, wiser than calendars. You're part of something that doesn't end. It renews, because every time someone speaks a word in quiche, every time a child learns to count the sacred days, every time a joke is told at a market in Yucatec, or a jaguar mask is carved anew, or a bowl of atole is placed before a fire, the Maya live. Still, so now, as the last glyph fades and the final day drifts into starlight, you lie quietly under a sky your ancestors once charted with nothing more than patience and the naked eye. The jungle hums a lullaby older than cities. The cenotes reflect constellations. A frog somewhere croaks the opening bars of that eternal song, and you, finally still, breathe in rhythm with it all. The long count doesn't end tonight. It folds softly into the next breath. The next step, the next dream, what was carved in stone now, rests gently in memory in yours. And that's enough. You've walked through centuries. You've weathered drought and laughter, prophecy, and pork-scented invaders. And still you remain, a quiet keeper of a story too wide for any one mouth. Let yourself drift now, knowing you carry the echoes of maize gods, feathered serpents, mischievous hero twins, and star priests who could trace time by moonlight alone. Let the memory of hot limestone beneath your feet and the taste of cacao on your tongue fade into something softer. You've seen the glyphs. You've walked the steps. You've whispered the names into the night. So rest, gentle traveler. The jungle will keep watch. The stars will shift, but never stray. And if you wake again before the sun, listen closely. The ancestors still speak in the rustle of the leaves,